謝主席。咁我哋開會啦嚇，人數夠啦。咁咧，首先咧，議程嘅第一項咧，就係上次嘅續議事項咧，有一個環表俾大家睇嘅，就唔需要今日討論。即係大家我嚟參考下上次兩次嘅我哋要跟進嘅問題咧，佢就逐一就答翻我哋秘書，多謝秘書處咧就整一個表，令我哋比較清晰啲去睇到我哋問過啲咩問題，佢又答過啲乜嘢。裏邊咧就仲有啲咧係未曾回應嘅咧，咁等佢一回應咧就會補充落個表度嘅。喺呢度咧，我哋好多謝西九管理局嘅朋友同埋民政事務局嘅出席嘅同事咧，出席今日嘅會議。咁今日咧主要有兩項咧三項咧重要嘅嘢講。第一咧就係 M+ 嘅規劃同埋發展啦，同埋西九文化區嘅公園發展啦，以及咧西九文化區計劃建築工程嘅開展前佢嘅管理同埋使用嘅情況。好啦，咁再次歡迎大家出席今日嘅會議。咁而家咧，我哋第二項嘅議程咧，就係就 M+ 嘅規劃同埋發展嘅提供最新資料。咁咧就政府文件應該都係俾咗大家啦，尋日嚇。咁請大家咧請民政事務局有冇發言？
好啊，唔該，主席。西九管理局咧就曾經喺去年呢4月向呢一個小組委員會咧就展述咗 M+ 嘅願景同埋發展情況。至到今日咧，就 M+ 已經喺呢一個建立專業團隊、建立館藏、博物館建築物嘅設計同埋拓展觀眾等多方面咧就取得進展。M+ 咧已經將佢嘅購藏嘅政策啦，同埋佢購置咗同埋獲贈嘅藏品嘅內容咧，係上載去到管理局嘅網頁，係俾市民去參閱嘅。咁 M+ 咧為咗培育我哋本地嘅人才咧，佢係推出咗一個即係擴大咗規模嘅實習計劃，為有志於喺呢一個領域發展嘅年青人咧，就提供咗參與今年呢6月至到11月舉行嘅威尼斯雙年展嘅學習機會。此外咧，今年年初咧，佢亦都推出咗呢一個導賞義工計劃咧。呢兩項計劃咧都獲得超過1700份嘅申請。呢個咧顯示咧，我哋香港人呢對於參與 M+ 嘅興趣咧已經係正在增加㗎啦。管理局咧就提交咗文件啦，向小組委員會去匯報 M+ 嘅最新進展。而家咧我就請西九文化管理局行政總裁廉立智先生同埋 M+ 嘅行政總監李立偉博士咧向各位介紹有關嘅內容。多謝。
好，請Mr. Lin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the subcommittee. I've got with me today Dr. Lars Nitfer, the director of M+, and I'd like him to take us through some of the key issues that we're talking about, and then we're very happy to respond to questions in regard to M+. We're at a very exciting point in the journey. The jury will meet to consider the submissions made on for the design of M+ in May, and we hope to have that decision resolved over the course of the coming months. It's also an important time in terms of two major events for M+, the one that Dr. Nitfer will talk about, the inflation exhibition, which will open later this week on the West Kowloon site, which is a big public fun entertainment exhibition. And importantly, from Hong Kong's perspective, the project that M+ and the Art Development Council are doing to represent Hong Kong at the Venice Biennale opening on the 28th of May. I think there's a range of other issues in the paper and specific issues that you would want to pick up from previous conversations, including the contribution that we've had from both Dr. Sig in terms of his collection, and increasingly an interest from the collectors of Hong Kong and other places to look at making philanthropic contributions to the collection for M+, which will be very important in being able to maintain the momentum on the project. So perhaps I could just hand over to Dr. Sig to say some oh, sorry. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, to Dr. Nitfer to say a few words of introduction.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, as stated in the paper, basically the M+ organization are working on with 4 things in parallel continuously. One is, of course, building a team, because without a team you can't do anything. And the M+ team is basically 21 members of staff, but with 7 more members in the pipeline in various stages of recruitment. So we will hit probably around 30 staff members in the beginning of the autumn, which is badly needed, since the 3 other tasks that we have focus on is, of course, building a collection, which is a major undertaking in terms of research and market research, scientific and cultural research, negotiations and so forth. So that's a big task. The other, which is of course coming closer and closer because we're in the middle of the architecture competition right now, is building a building. And we will of course act as a client, as a end user client in that entire design process, and it will be a very demanding task if we aim at getting this building absolutely right, building it from inside out, as we've always said, not just building a building and then seeing what we should have in it, but actually making it fit for its purpose. And then thirdly, of course, the entire big task of building audiences and building capacities and nurturing talents in Hong Kong. And as CEO Michael Lynch said, I mean, we do this through our exhibition programs. Now, next upcoming is the inflation exhibition, which I expect will reach large audiences in Hong Kong. It happens on the site, more or less on the site of the future M+ and the park. And it's a big project which has a lot of fun in it also, and is really would work also for families and children to visit, hoping for good weather since it's outdoors. We also, as was mentioned, work in Venice with the Venice Biennial. But I think maybe even more importantly, we do a number of public introductions, the series of M+ Matters public programs, the public forums where we talk and meet the public and meet stakeholders and talk about everything we do and try to create as much transparency as ever possible. And thirdly, of course, the project to build talent, to nurture talents, to build future sort of staff for M+ and for similar institutions around Hong Kong through various types of training programs, internship programs, and so forth. So these are the strands we're working on, and it requires full force ahead. And I think I can say after 2.5 years in the post that the results we see are we're actually a little bit ahead of schedule according to the plans we established about 2 years ago, and things have been going really well. We've had very good results in all areas, but it's a lot of work. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Okay. 仲有冇其他人發言？如果冇咧，咁到我哋委員咧，大家即係提問嚇。請提問嘅舉手，因為今日嘅議程都比較多咧，咁我哋會每次咧就係4分鐘連問連答嚇。謝偉銓嚇，一路舉手啦嚇。咁我問住叫住先啦嚇，謝偉銓先。
好，多謝主席。我想問一問咧，喺嗰個文件4嗰度咧，有講嗰個員工招聘咧，咁其中有10名咧來自香港咧。其實我想了解一下咧，基本上咧，即係嚟自香港同埋非嚟自香港咧，喺個工作性質上咧，係主要有冇咩分別，或者主要從事乜嘢咧？咁啊，呢個第一個問題。咁啊，第二個問題咧，就我想都係講翻，即係嗰個評審嗰個分數嗰個計法咧，即係關於戲曲中心嗰陣時，我哋都係已經係都我諗我哋都表達咗意見啦。咁喺呢個 M+ 嗰方面咧，其實即係有冇檢討下，即係上次戲曲中心嗰個關於設計嗰個評審方面咧，就有冇地方可以係調整或者改善咧？唔該主席。
OK，邊位答啊？民政事務局啊。 要話 Mr. Lynch。
關於嗰個員工嗰個我請Dr. Lee about the staff. What is the job nature of the staff recruited from Hong Kong? Would you please explain?
Dr. Lee, please.
Yes. I think from the outset we were aware of the fact that we wouldn't be able to find all types of expertise in Hong Kong, but that we would move towards, when the museum opens and for the future, that we would sort of nurture talent and build talent in the areas where we don't have sufficient experience in Hong Kong. At the present, roughly, and that's been the model since we set out, is that at least half the team should be from Hong Kong. And it's good if about a quarter could be from the region, from other parts of nearer Asia, I should say, and then the occasional individual, maybe 25% or so coming from elsewhere, where we need specific types of expertise. There is no difference in the team between Hong Kong staff and staff from other parts of Asia. We have the head of education comes from Hong Kong. The senior curator of Chinese art comes from mainland China. The chief registrar or head of registrars, which is a very sort of very expert type of job, comes from Spain. But all in all, there is no sense of hierarchy or difference other than we go just try to find the best expertise we can ever find anywhere in the world to build a great team. Over time, we hope that we will be able to transfer, say, from the registrar, transfer the knowledge from her over to more junior staff that we're hiring from Hong Kong, so we can build a pool of expertise within Hong Kong in this very particular field in which there is no formal education anywhere in the world. These are jobs that you typically learn on the job in major institutions and then move out to other institutions.
咁關於嗰個計劃嗰個點樣？
Second question, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to take that on. Clearly, the competition and the assessment criteria were provided are the assessment criteria that were entered into, approved by the board last year before the competition went out. We're not in a position to change the criteria part way through the competition, but as you will have seen from some of the discussion following the board meeting last week, the chairman has made it very clear that looking at value for money, looking at the cost issues is an overriding interest for the organisation at this point in terms of the individual projects, but also looking at the total budget of it. I think the one point I would make is that the rules of the Hong Kong IA, in line with international competitions, we have injected the idea of cost and value for money into the competition. Under their rules, they don't have rules for the cost issue, that the competition is meant to, with each of the competitors providing their QS to be able to provide their estimates. We have an independent QS. We have independent costings of the project as it's developed from inception when the project was funded in 2008. But we are very conscious of the issue and will be putting significant emphasis on our discussions as we move into
Okay, Mr. Lynch, 我諗佢哋會繼續會問呢啲問題㗎啦，係嘛？已經過咗時間，希望咧，因為時間唔夠咧，希望問同埋答咧都比較精簡同埋對住嗰個問題去回答啦。跟住何秀蘭。
唔該，主席。我哋做博物館呢，嗰個館藏係會先天不足嘅。一，我哋又唔係帝國主義通道去掠奪咗好多人哋嘅文化藏品翻嚟，我哋香港冇咁樣做過。第二呢，就係香港自己本土，我哋以往亦都唔係話有好多藝術家留落一啲好嘅文化遺產俾我哋，但係館藏呢，唔係一定要擺一啲百年嘅鎮山寶喺度去俾人睇，亦都可以係一個同現代生活大家結連，係一個互動嘅過程，係等大家睇得到一啲現代生活本土過去一啲好基本 嘅歷史係可以擺到出嚟。咁所以呢，嗰個策展人嘅獨立自主係非常之重要嘅。喺我哋香港呢個咁新嘅博物館呢，人才比館藏可能係更加重要。咁是故我哋要確保呢啲策展人嗰個獨立自主，同埋佢哋嗰個表達方式。咁我了解到呢，喺第12段嗰度呢，我哋舊年年中就買咗一批藝術品，係現代中國重要嘅作品。咁裏邊呢，我據理解係包括咗幾件艾未未嘅作品添。咁其實喺西九行政總裁初上任嚟嘅時候呢，我哋都已經問過 Mr. Lynch， 當面對即係萬一有來自各方嘅壓力嘅時候，可唔可以負起確保策展人、西九管理局嘅工作人員一個藝術上邊嘅獨立自主？咁我就想問一問，而家呢個機制係點樣確保佢哋嘅獨立自主呢？我希望艾未未嘅作品喺西九管理局唔係一個爭議啦。咁而呢幾件作品係可以幾時攞出嚟喺香港展出呢？
問完啦 ，Mr. Lynch。
To answer question number one about the independence of the curators, and I appreciate this question. I think it's a very important one. I don't think you can run a successful cultural institution without independence and freedom and clear freedom of expression. And I think that most of the key members of the curatorial team would not stay in post if they felt that there was any type of regulation in their ways of working. So I think it's self-regulating, actually. We have recruited a number of curators who easily could have jobs anywhere in the world, even also of those who are from Hong Kong, because of their expertise and their standing professionally. And they would never risk their standing by being subject to any type of censorship or other regulation. And the first time I was in LegCo 2 years ago, I received the same answer, and I said that for me this is also the way forward. If there were any signs of regulations or decrease of freedom of expression, I mean, I would probably not stay in post. I mean, it's as simple as that if my arguments don't go through. In terms of showing the SIG collection, and of course, a not unimportant part of that collection are works by Ai Weiwei, for example, and many, many other important mainland artists. The plan is that we will make the first presentation during 2015 when the Arts Pavilion is up and running, and we plan to show the story of Chinese contemporary art, the 1980s, 1990s, and the 2000s in 3 different sections there, as a first taste of this fantastic collection. Thank you.
我希望香港唔好有政治壓力，
我諗咧就已經
係可以令到呢批
聽得到啦。
國際專才留喺香港。
我聽到㗎啦嚇，已經過咗時間。咁啊，頭先未有人跟咧，我就跟咗有2條問題，我都係跟進何秀蘭嘅問題。我想問下，而家你策展人請咗幾多咧？你頭先個團隊話有20-30人，而家你請咗幾多咧？第一，咁你如果未請齊人，你咁早就走去採購、收藏呢啲咁嘅時候，你係咪喺一個好先天不足嘅情況底下去進行呢啲咁危險嘅事情？第三咧就係話，在採購嘅時候咧，好多世界嘅一流嘅博物館採購嘅時候咧，都會係主動去自己挑選自己嘅小藏品嘅，即使係人哋送俾呢個博物館，但係我哋好似咧缺乏呢一個勇氣去挑選呢啲咁嘅藏品，就任由人哋俾乜你就要乜。咁呢樣嘢係唔係違反咗嗰個策展人嗰個獨立性同埋佢自己嗰個獨立自主嗰個方法咧？咁係咪呢方面咧，我哋做得非常之弱，係任人牽住個鼻嚟走咧？第二個大嘅問題咧，就係關於嗰個展館比賽，頭先已經答咗咧，就話根本上就冇可能改啦，因為嗰個成本效益咧已經係喺舊年已經開咗個設計㗎啦，而家我哋改唔到，中途改唔到。咁我想問下你預計 M+ 會係話俾我哋聽，你會攞幾多錢嚟興建 M+ 嘅嚇？ 因為我哋唔係提款機啊，就算我哋係提款機啊，我哋都要有錢噶嘛，咁唔係任你撳噶喎。咁我想兩個問題答一答，好嗎？嚇 ，Mr. Lynch, please.
Okay, let me take the last one first, Mr. Chairman. Clearly, what we're not asking for, and I think we've made it clear that once we've gone through the competition and gone through the costing process, we'll then be in a position to have that discussion with LegCo, and as I understand, that's scheduled for later in July. In regard to the question of the curators and the collection, we have to have a collection in the within M+, and all of those decisions are made by the acquisition committee of M+, which is comprised of advice from Lars and the curators within the team, but those decisions are made by members.
即係唔係策展人決定 ？It's not by curator, it's by the advisor, isn't it?
Well, the authority is given to the acquisition committee by the board of West Kowloon. So that's the way we have to make the decisions about acquiring work. And clearly, of the 867 pieces of work that have been acquired for the M+ collection outside those of the SIG collection, those decisions have been made by the acquisition committee, and 700 of those works are by artists from Hong Kong.
Could we have the name list of the advisors?
Yes, you can have the committee. The committee is chaired by Dr. Victor Lowe, who chairs the museum committee, and it comprises Claire Sue, the head of the Asian Art Archive, David Pong,
okay.
Nansen Shea, and
Shall we?
OK， 我諗你會後俾我哋啦，好唔好？咁但係我都好質疑點解你急得咁緊要去買嘢？佢個 creator 個團隊都未成立好，你就趕住去買嘢，你好急咩？你根本冇地方展噶嘛，係嘛
？Well, no, we're certainly the works we are acquiring are related to the parts of the collection that we're building up on. As soon as we have the new curators in specific areas like moving image and contemporary culture, that's when we will be acquiring.
我想問下民政局啦，你哋有冇一個 procedure 話俾佢聽，有一個程序話俾佢聽，點樣去採購？佢而家係咪已經跨越咗個程序啊？
西九管理局咧係有研究過同埋係通過咗一套整體嘅嗰個購藏嗰個政策嘅，咁亦都係包括裏邊嘅程序。咁呢啲程序咧就亦都有諮詢過廉政公署嗰個意見，同埋咧喺呢個董事局轄下嗰個博物館諮詢委員會嘅委員嘅意見去制定嘅。咁所以今一次嗰個館藏嗰個收購咧，亦都係按照呢一套嘅館藏購藏嘅政策去進行嘅。
我諗會後你俾個程序我哋睇一睇啦，好嘛？
好。
下一位，陳婉霞。
多謝主席。我咁樣，我會問晒啲問題之後咧，我會再舉第二次手嘅。我諗
未必有第二次啊，我諗你
咁我問晒先啦。我對第一個員工，我有質疑嘅。國際嘅定義點解咁快話香港部分唔得咧？即係我覺得你話如果你個 leader 係有呢個經驗嘅。當然我強調，類似水墨畫嗰啲咧就唔使啦，中國大把即係類似呢啲。但如果你話就算國際嘅，我當咗你而家要有個國際嘅，你咪呢打用一個啦，何須請咁多個咧？你全部收晒啊嘛！即係我就覺得國際嘅定義，我哋講笑係咪識英文先叫國際咧？而家香港文化界就質疑緊呢個問題啊嘛。咁我自己覺得就呢個我想問嘅。第二個咧就話個設計未有。你咁快主要問嗰個購藏，咁我跟住即係話，咁你咪到時購藏好多嘢咧，嗰個建築費又好大咧，咁呢個亦都我關心嘅。即係我覺得兩者之間，我特別覺得政府由於你民政呢部分咧，我擔心，即係到底香港要使呢筆錢嘅時候咧，你做呢個位置，你到起個咩位咧？有冇一啲好專業嘅 support 住你睇翻呢啲嘢咧？主席，我連起3個問題，唔該。
好，即係答啦，盡快答。邊位？
Should I?
Yeah. Mr. Dr.
First of all, the question of why we have outside experts, because operating a large museum as the one we're setting up is it's an expertise task, and we don't have long traditions or major museums that over time has built this capacity. And therefore, in the early stages, we need to bring some types of expertise for which there are no formal training from other parts of the world. It's a minority of the team, and I think over time they will transfer their knowledge to the benefit of the Hong Kong team and the Hong Kong public, and that we will have this expertise in Hong Kong. But I think that we're given the task to create something that actually has world-class standard, and then we have to do it in the way that we find proper. It's not about English or not English, and actually, as a matter of fact, some of the overseas experts speak Chinese, so it's not a language matter, and I think everybody's aware of that also. When it comes to the expertise of choosing the collection, I think just a year ago there were doubts about our ability to build a large enough collection.
我哋嘅設計個博物館未做，咁你跟住又買晒咁多藏品，咁到時你話，我買咗咁多嘢，我要起大啲啦咁樣。而家你仲係進行設計，未進行一個比賽噶嘛？我問緊呢個問題。
Well, the whole idea with this project, and as it was outlined by the Museum Advisory Group in 2006, 2008, was that we should build a museum from inside out, that we should not repeat the mistake that's often made, that first you build a building and then you start thinking about what should go in it. The right way to build a museum is actually to build a collection and let the building be shaped by that.
Sorry. 由於我冇時間，我要講咧，呢個係觀點嘅角度啫。我覺得你咁講有你嘅道理，但我嘅講法亦都有個道理。而家我仲想話俾政府聽，實香港我哋好多畫廊啲都好專業，好有國際經驗嘅。對啲成個政府構思，而家你成個家就俾咗人哋當嘅，你變咗文化界出邊啲人就算嘈緊啦。即係呢個過程當中，點樣本地嘅就算當咗我係亞太區嘅，我哋都係國際部分嘛。即係啲意見好大嘅，主席。我個問題好清楚，另外個設計費問題，我好擔心而家未嚟嘅個 M+ 嗰個。
可唔可以俾到個設計費？你估計係幾多啊 ，Mr. Lynch？ Can you guess the cost of M+?
I think I just answered that question. Until we've no, the figure in the budget, in the CC case. Is the only figure we have at this stage. We will obviously be providing that information to you as soon as we have got the submissions from the 6 companies, and our independent QS has done that. Just going back to the issue of local galleries, clearly we have recruited from both public and private galleries in Hong Kong. But the issue you have not had a contemporary art museum other than in the private sector, and this is the first museum of that type. And so from our point of view, we'll be looking at people from the best available expertise. Our curator from China, our curator from both Chinese.
You can answer in other questions. 馬逢國，跟住。
多謝主席。我嘅問題咧，因為我係董事會嘅成員咧，我先申報啦，咁所以好多西九嘅情況我都比較了解。咁有一個問題咧，我就係關於嗰個館藏嗰個採購嘅問題。我會重點講係嗰個價格嘅問題。政府今年咧就破天荒第一次咧，就係喺預算案啱啱提出，最近都聽日都仲會 debate 嘅，就係會有一個5000萬嘅撥款咧。係去採購一啲俾康文署嘅博物館去進行採購，咁我覺得有啲奇怪嘅就係，即係政府點樣去考慮，或者西九本身點樣去面對，就係過去從來都冇一個獨立嘅預算，咁今年咧就突然間有一個獨立嘅預算，咁同時咧西九亦進行緊採購，咁當然從嗰個業者嚟講咧，譬如話特別係香港嘅藝術家咧，突然間多咗一個大嘅預算去採購咧，對佢嚟講係一個好嘅，咁我係從代表業界嚟講，我係支持嘅。咁但係調翻轉嚟講咧，即係我又想問翻啦，譬如話從西九管理局嘅角度就係話，政府有呢個咁嘅採購政策，新嘅一個採購政策出台，係 LCSC 做嘅。咁咧同西九本身進行緊嘅共同時間進行緊嘅一個採購，會唔會產生咗啲競爭嘅狀態咧？會唔會因為咁咧係導致到我哋喺採購上邊咧 係要負擔更加高嘅費用呢？咁事實上由西九個出現同埋最近即係西九個館藏開始採購之後呢，成個藝術品市場呢已經係有一個好大嘅變化將會出現嘅。好多外國嘅大嘅gallery 或者本地嘅一啲畫廊啊，都已經係同時進行緊採購。一個咁嘅新嘅現象嘅出現嘅時候，到底對未來嗰個市場嗰個影響會係點呢？即係西九自身點樣去評估，或者點樣去看待呢幾樣嘢呢？咁而政府亦都同時點樣睇一個我哋而家有少少係我哋人為做出嚟嘅一個咁嘅即係市場。咁譬如話好多畫廊咧，最近嘅拍賣啊，都已經係即係有我感覺到有一啲咁嘅部署咧，就係令到嗰個價格咧係更加合理啊，即係更加合理，即係特別係一啲香港嘅作家嘅藏品。咁呢啲咁嘅情況，總體嚟講，西九自身點睇？政府點睇咧？唔該。
係政府。
咁我首先其實咧就想就住政府咧提出嗰個建議咧係話額外撥款5000萬俾康文署去購藏嗰度咧，我就即係都想提供一啲資料嘅。咁首先咧就康文署其實佢嗰個購藏嗰個政策咧就係一早已經係定咗落嚟咧，就唔係話因為今次有額外5000萬咧就去有一個新嘅購藏嘅政策。因為咧康文署轄下嘅博物館咧。康文署轄下嘅博物館咧，特別係呢一個藝術嘅博物館咧，其實佢嗰個博物館本身嗰個購藏嘅政策咧，個重點咧，正正就係以香港為本位嘅藝術嗰個全面點樣去展示啊、研究啊，同埋係去推廣，即係向香港。咁呢一個咧就係已經係確立咗已久嘅一個購藏嘅政策嚟㗎啦。咁過往嚟講咧，康文署咧佢就冇一個好固定嘅即係預算咧，係每一年可以係買幾多呢啲館藏。咁所以咧就變咗咧，佢哋就好唔穩定咧，就好多時候可能去到個財政年尾嗰陣時候咧，就見到啊有一啲可以即係都係動用嘅，咁先至去買。咁變咗咧就係一個。即係咁嘅情況底下去購呢個館藏咧，就喺嗰個整體個策劃嗰度咧，就唔係咁理想。咁所以咧，我哋就即係希望咧，佢將來都可以係有一個充分嘅時間去策劃同埋去喺個市場嗰度去搜購一啲適合嘅館藏。咁所以咧就額外撥咗呢即係建議撥呢一個5000萬。咁但係呢個5000萬咧，其實係冇時限嘅，因為我哋唔想話硬性規定康文署一定要係幾多年裏邊一定要用晒嗰5000萬，因為其實最重要係佢自己物色到一啲合適嘅館藏，咁就因應嗰個適合嗰個館藏咧，咁去進行一個選購嘅。咁所以咧就呢個5000萬咧，就嗰個用意同埋嗰個出發點就係咁樣。咁而藝術博物館咧，同埋西九嗰個M+ 嗰個博物館咧，其實佢哋一路都有好緊密嘅聯繫咧，就大家都好了解大家嗰個定位係點樣嘅。咁香港自己嗰個康文署轄下嗰個藝術博物館咧，佢嗰個重點咧就真係聚焦喺我哋自己本地香港整體成個藝術嗰個發展咧，由佢以往到而家，同埋係一個全面係各方面去即係好多種唔同嘅藝術家佢嗰個特點啊個特色係點樣？咁我哋香港自己嗰個藝術博物館咧係嗰個定位係咁樣嘅，而西九嗰個咧佢就係一個係當代嘅。即係佢係 focus 喺呢一個20世紀同埋21世紀啦，佢就即係以香港為出發，但係亦都會係擴展到去亞洲啊同埋世界各地嗰個當代嗰個藝術。咁所以大家都好了解大家嗰個定位係點樣，咁啊會互相配合嘅。咁同埋咧，其實佢哋喺買館藏嗰陣時候咧，大家都會有溝通咧，就唔好去重複嘅，因為其實大家都係即係公共嘅資源啦。咁所以其實佢哋咧係即係將來一路去做嘢咧，都係可以有合作嘅空間喺度，即係譬如佢哋策展嗰陣時候啊，做嗰啲展覽，如果係可以用得着大家對方嗰啲館藏咧，其實佢哋係可以互借嗰啲館藏嘅。咁所以我就即係提供個資料去到呢一度。
我夠鐘啦，其他啲問題咧，我希望就書面答覆啦，就民政事務局同埋西九管理局嚇。下一位咧就係蔣麗芸。
唔該，主席。我有兩方面嘅問題。第一個問題咧就簡單啲。我睇到咧喺第7段咧。咁就提及到，咁就係 M+ 咧就首個第一個實習計劃已經完成咗啦。咁我想知道咧就有幾多嘅學員參與，咁同埋咧就完成實習之後咧就有幾多個畢業嘅學員會繼續參與油麻地嘅支援工作咧咁。第二方面嘅問題咧 就係又係有關呢一個藏品嘅啦。咁其實我都想知道咧，就目前有冇一個政策，譬如話呢個5年之內呢16億，我諗住係會有幾多即係買幾多錢會撥喺做買香港嘅藏品嘅，幾多係國際嘅，或者其他或者係內地嘅，或者係其他國家嘅，即係喺呢度有冇一個政策咧咁咧就同埋我亦都想知道咧，目前嚟講16億已經用咗幾多錢咧，仲剩幾多咧？唔該。
好，答咗呢度先啦。Dr. Lee.
On the first question, at the time, which was 1 year ago, that training program involved 3 interns. At the time, we only had a staff of 7 also, so we couldn't take many more interns than 3. Of those, all 3 were first hired for another, after the internship program, they worked for another 3 months on a sort of a project basis within the M+. And at the present, 1 of the 3 has a job in M+ and as an assistant curator. As mentioned, the later internship programs involves larger numbers of people because we have a bigger organization now and can, with quality, handle more people. Secondly, on the policy for acquisitions after a 5-year period. First, maybe it should be clarified that out of the 1.7 billion Hong Kong dollars for the collection and collection-related works or costs, only 1 billion is earmarked for the actual collection. It's impossible to predict what percentage should be for different parts of say, whether it should be Hong Kong art or Asian art or mainland Chinese art, partly because we can't say how things will develop in terms of donations. Of course, the portion of money that had to be spent on mainland Chinese contemporary art, for example, went down considerably thanks to the phenomenal donation of 1.3 billion, more the entire acquisition budget actually, to M+. So that means that we can allocate more money for other areas. But since we are receiving donations also from Hong Kong artists, to date 12 Hong Kong artists have been giving us works, also major Hong Kong artists, that also makes our burden in terms of where money is spent a little bit lighter. I should mention, in reference to an earlier question, that donations go through the same type of scrutiny and decision-making process as an acquisition. There is no difference in terms of that. So it's not just that anyone who wants to donate will be accepted. It's the same kind of process as with an acquisition through purchase. Thank you.
既然係咁嘅話咧，又會唔會即係考慮咁咧就而家因為橫掂個場館都未起，會唔即係咁會唔會咧就係而家積極去揾多啲人即係去捐贈嘅咁咧，因為假如你捐贈好多有都夠啦，足夠未來5年啦，咁你16咁你剩低嗰啲錢你咪可以慳翻咯。
答埋佢啦。
Well, in general, we'll be looking at finding ways of supporting it through philanthropic donations, sponsorship, collections being donated, but clearly recognising the pressure on the cost of the project, recognising the increase in construction costs. We'll be engaging with the Hong Kong community and the broader artistic community in looking at the forms of support we've got. I've talked about that before with LegCo. We're looking some issues that we've looked at. We're now focusing on the philanthropic and the sponsorship opportunities to make sure that we maximise the amount of money that we can contribute both to the collection but also to deal with the cost issue.
好啊，咁你會後俾翻個資料我哋啦嚇，你話拎翻嚟啦。好，下一位，我不如讀一讀個名先。而家第一輪咧就係劉慧卿、姚思榮、麥美娟、梁家傑就未講嘅。咁劉慧卿。
多謝主席。主席，首先我就多謝阿陳文偉博士同埋黃寶儀女士啦。琴日佢嚟我辦事處咧，就同我解釋啲嘢。咁啊，即係我哋多謝官員咧，或者係西九啲人士多啲同我哋解釋。咁我哋亦都講話最好咧，就喺委員會度清清楚楚交代咧，呢個係最有用。但係同我哋多啲溝通，我哋係歡迎嘅。咁我就希望咧，就係即係嗰啲數咧，主席就盡快會列得清楚出嚟。無論係嗰個戲曲中心又好，第二啲，即係你列晒啲數出嚟，俾人睇到超支係點解，係邊樣係因為係通脹，或者因為有新嘅項目，各樣嘢，我希望係即係當局同埋西九係盡快會咁樣做，即係俾份文件俾委員會大家去睇。咁對於呢個 M+ 主席，我係好希望呢，我哋係會俾到個空間呢，係揾到一個好出色嘅設計。因為大家都好希望，有啲人話：哇！你成日話香港係國際大都會啊，點解啲建築物咁鬼核突㗎？點解都唔會有多啲地標式？但係我都明白咧，如果你係要有啲地標式各樣嘢，可能咧個價錢係會貴啲。咁但係即係我哋而家咧，我哋立法會，我相信我哋把關咧，就係要揾到個平衡。咁你上一次講過戲曲中心，亦都唔係話最貴啦。即係我哋亦都未必，即係我唔會話覺得，你唔使啦，淨係揀最平嗰個啦。咁亦未必。咁上一次就傾就話係咪揾啲有成本效益㗎嘛，主席。咁琴日兩位解俾我聽咧，就話國際上咧係冇咁寫嘅，因為上一次我都問，喂，咁外國都有好多比賽㗎嘛，咁佢哋係點寫嘅咧？即係唔係我哋一定跟足佢，但係我哋要參考，因為我哋都要國際嗰啲人嚟參加㗎嘛。咁所以我希望佢哋好簡單講一講係點做，同埋咧，即係管理局係點樣係盡咗最大嘅努力，去令到嗰個成本係受到控制。即係而家講緊個設計嗰度啦嚇，受到控制。但係咧，亦都希望咧嗰個過程咧係會令到啲有創意啊，即係好有才華嘅人咧係願意參加，而幫到香港咧係有呢啲好嘅設計。我覺得呢個係好重要嘅。咁同埋而家又噏唔到個數啦，主席。即係幾時先可以俾到個數立法會咧？嗱，上一次咧，馬逢國議員咧。佢喺咪度啦嚇，即係佢講咗啲説話係令到我哋好憂心，因為佢坐兩個位啊嘛，佢又係管理局，咁後來佢就解釋啦嘛，咁其實佢越幫就越忙，我都其實都唔知後來乜啦。佢係話一定係超支㗎啦，啊最好就增加地積比嚟去貼啦，咁又冇人和議佢喎，喺管理局又冇啊，呢度又冇，咁如果佢管理局啲人都咁講咧？主席，你唔係啊嘛，我都唔係，咁我哋更加擔心咯。所以希望你哋清楚楚講俾我哋聽，呢個過程係點樣？即係嗱，市民係想有嘅，當然平靚正啦，梗係，但係未必得。但係如果係要多錢嘅時候，你要解俾我哋聽㗎嘛。你淨係拎個大數嚟，哇，超支咗100%啦，咁樣咁啊，梗係唔掂啦，主席。
主席掂嘅，係佢掂嘅嚇。咁啊，請解釋一下，有時間。
Well, the process for the design choosing is that we are using an international jury, of which you have the details of that jury. It's comprised of art experts from Hong Kong and from other parts of the world, and comprises the chairman of the Museum Committee of the WKCD and the director of M+, Dr. Nitva. Clearly, the criteria that we've used are laid out, but from our point of view, the process that we've looked at for both buildings and the process that we've outlined to this committee, we have independent quality surveyors looking at the budgets for the projects. The individual submissions are all budgeted, and we have technical committees at the moment going over those submissions. We have cost consultants looking at those committees, and that process will continue through to the jury sitting in May, and then continual work will go on as it goes through the development committee of the WKCD and to the board of the WKCD. So we are incredibly conscious of the issue of cost, but I have to boringly reassert the issue that the major issue in regard to cost for these buildings is the fact that construction costs in Hong Kong have risen over 100% over the last 4 years. That includes government projects and private projects. And so clearly That information has been very broadly discussed in the committee. We recognise the pressure that's going to put on the project, the scope of the whole of the project in terms of going forward, and we will be doing everything in our power with the specialist teams, the internal players, the project teams, and with the architects and the design teams that are chosen to make sure that we get a quality outcome for Hong Kong and value for money.
The time's up.
Chairman, they should give us the figures as soon as possible so that we understand how the thing is
7月就會俾
developing.
你㗎啦嚇，咁我哋希望7月10號個會議嘅討論嘅時候已經有齊晒啲資料。咁咧跟住落嚟，姚思榮。
多謝主席。就有關提升大家對西九嗰個文化區認識咧，報告入面已經提到係拓展呢個觀眾群嘅，呢個係好事嚟嘅。我想問一問咧，喺呢個展館未開之前咧，呢2年咧，呢個有關方面咧係準備搞幾多場嘅活動？咁準備同咩單位合作？咁目標嗰個觀眾群係準備有幾多？同埋嗰個費用預算係準備有幾多咧？
邊個答
？We have, which is also mentioned in the paper, made a number of programs already. We do basically 2 public exhibitions annually on average, plus a number of talks, symposiums, public forums, and so forth. And they have slightly different targets at different times. Sometimes the projects are very much about the sort of the local community, and they happen in a local community, as with the Yamate project. The Inflation project is very much a sort of serious but still fun family project in a sense, where I think anyone from a 3-year-old to my grandmother could come and really enjoy it. And of course we have the public forums and the M+ matters, which have attracted thousands of people who come and participate in a debate. These are the general frameworks, annually 2 projects per year. From 2015, when we have the Arts Pavilion in place, that will be our base on West Kowloon. Generally, roughly, the budget for these programs are about as a totality in the figures of 15 million annually, which involves exhibitions and other types of projects. Thank you.
OK， 仲有冇其他補充？冇，係阿姚。
主席，我想問咧，呢1500萬係呢2年嘅開支啊，定係未來嘅開支？啊，同埋佢嗰個觀眾群方面，我聽咧都係本地為主嘅。將來有冇考慮喺旅客方面咧？提供一啲宣傳，使到大家對我哋西九嗰個認識更加深刻嘅啲。
係邊個位答？係咪民政局？
The target is local audience primarily, because that's our core audience. This is the audience we would like to build and build a relationship to over time. It so happens, for example, that both this year and last year, the big projects there are big projects that happened during the time of the Hong Kong Art Fair or Art Basel this year, which also means that we attract actually large numbers of the world's leading art experts to come and see our projects. But it's really much more difficult to build a tourist audience, because we pop up in different places, and it's very difficult to communicate to tourists where to go this time or that time. It's much easier to reach the local audience. And at the end of the day, it's for the people who live and work in Hong Kong we primarily create M+. I'm sure the tourists will come because we create something that is world class, but we are here for the people of Hong Kong.
OK， 下一位，麥美娟。
主要第一個問題都係咧，點解即係成日都話要喺外國先至可以揾到你哋認為係國際級或者世界級嘅人呢？即係如果頭先呢，嗱，副秘書長就講呢，話康文署呢會同你哋係有啲咩交流合作嘅。咁即係話其實我哋都唔係有啲唔能夠同你哋交流嘅人啦。咁唔通康文署嗰啲人唔係咩？即係又唔係世界級咩？如果佢哋康文署嗰啲未到嘅，咁即係同你哋又唔能夠合作啦，係嘛？咁即係其實你講啲有啲矛盾嘅。我哋係有人嘅。 OK， 亦都咧頭先你講嗰啲咧，要揾其他地方嘅人咧，即係我相信我哋香港咧，其實有好多你講 contemporary art 咧，我哋香港亦都唔少，只係你有冇心機去揾佢哋出嚟啫。OK， 咁啊，如果你都冇心機去揾，你梗係唔好啦咁。咁另外咧就你頭先講你啲 internship 嘅，其實我諗咧做呢個館咧，你請咗人翻嚟，你有一個負責人係一個國際級之後咧。你又可以，如果我哋講個技術轉移咧，其實係可以由嗰位嘅負責人將嗰啲知識或者技術咧，透過管理咧，去俾翻一啲香港嘅本地嘅人嘅。咁但係依家如果講你冚唪唥都喺可能嘅 team 裏邊，一半甚至大半都係外國人嘅，或者其他你聲稱世界級嘅人。咁點樣可以將嗰啲技術轉移到俾香港呢？而 eventually 即係你嗰個時間咪要搞好耐，同埋究竟你有冇咁嘅心去做呢？ internship 嗰樣嘢呢，你話你培養好多實習咩咁？你點樣可以令到佢哋實習完之後可以吸納翻喺呢個館裏邊，喺將來可以做嗰個頭先再強調一個技術轉移？香港以前都有嘅，其他工程起隧道咩咁？我哋最初冇人嘅，透過技術轉移可以做到。但係而家呢個館，我哋可唔可以做到呢樣嘢呢？似乎我哋冇乜信心可以做到呢樣嘢。第二樣嘢就真係再講一次，喺我哋香港裏邊有好多嘅藝術家可以提供佢哋嘅知識，可以同我哋嗰啲個聲稱國際級嘅人呢去合作嘅。只要我哋有一個負責人呢，可以同佢哋一齊合作嘅。咁但係點解你哋唔去喺嗰度盡量 explore 去揾呢？咁另外頭先你講嗰樣嘢呢，我有啲擔心。你話你要揾嗰個展品，然後先至去決定嗰個設計，要 inside out 㗎。咁呢，你點樣去決定個 budget 呢？去到尾，你會唔會因為我有咁多展品，所以我要起一個館去 cater， 即係去符合、去迎合或者接納晒我咁多、容納晒我咁多嘅展品，最終又超過 budget 呢？又會唔會有超支呢？你點樣去控制嗰個開支嘅預算呢？
OK， 答一答。
But perhaps I'll pick up the first part of the question and then ask, in terms of Dr. Nitford to comment. All of the jobs that we recruit people from are open to Hong Kong. Many of a number of our employees have come from LCSD institutions, including the head of education for M+. And LCSD and other people are able to apply. The only issue that we are applying is that we need specific expertise. So when we need an expert in Chinese contemporary art, we chose, after rigorous selection procedures, P. Lee from Beijing, because he was regarded internationally as one of the leading experts. Similarly, in regard to design, a very international area for Hong Kong, we chose Eric Chan, Chinese-American, who had been working in Beijing and New York as the people. But our focus is to give opportunities to Hong Kong people unless there is no specific expertise that we need to be able to build either the building, the collection, or the institution. Now, I'll ask Dr. Nitford to comment because I realise the time pressure we're under.
Okay.
Just briefly on the internship programs. I don't think there is any internship program in the world where you guarantee the people who come in, who are interns, that they will get a job. We will try to employ as many as possible, but the good thing is that we also provide people who have further training than they had before for other institutions in Hong Kong, for the LCSD museums, and so we broaden the pool of people with skills in Hong Kong. We're not only working with ourselves as a focus, even though we will be the big new employer, of course, on site. So I think that some of the interns will get a job with M+, others will end up working in other institutions, other places, and I think that's a value. We enrich Hong Kong and the pool of expertise simply.
好啦，其他嘅嘢就一陣間先至或者係書面答覆，因為我哋今日嘅第一輪呢個議題咧係去到10點鐘，而家都10點鐘啦，仲有2位第一輪都未問嘅，咁我哋問完咧就完結呢個議題。請副主席梁家傑。
係，多謝主席。主席，我就好關心嗰個館藏嘅策略同埋嗰個 策展人有冇足夠嘅自由空間去決定嗰個館藏嘅策略啦，同埋佢策展嘅時候係咪有一個自由度？嗱，咁我哋一直都知道啊，主席就係呢個西九裏面嘅 M+ 呢個博物館呢，係有4個視覺文化範疇嘅。咁而家據西九管理局今日交上嚟嘅文件呢，就有3個策展人呢，就住其中3個視覺文化範疇呢，都正在喺度招募之中。咁文件冇交代清楚係咪第4個視覺文化範疇已經有策展人呢？但係如果當你有啦，咁4個之中有3個都未埋位，你已經有咁多嘅藏品，買嘅有買嘅，人哋送嘅有送嘅，咁你點樣可以話俾我哋聽，即係呢個策展人呢係有一個決定佢嘅館藏策略啊，同埋佢策展嘅安排啊，同埋藏品嗰個佢有冇自由嘅空間呢？咁樣，即係我想知道其實係點樣啦。咁第二個問題就簡單啲嘅，就係我想問下呢，就係而家你話呢啲藏品呢已經係由一個信託準備用嗰個信託嚟到去持有啦。呢個信託已經係成立咗未呢？個信託人係邊個呢？主席。
Okay, Mr. Lynch, please.
Deputy Chairman, in regard to the trust, we are still establishing the trust as part of the conditions of gift, and that legal work will be completed in the coming months. The trustees will be I think that the final mechanism is that they are appointed by the Chief Secretary to represent the interests of the collection, and we would provide that info. They haven't as yet been appointed until the legal deed is drawn up.
In terms of the curatorial team, maybe there is a need for a clarification. We do have 11 curators in post already, 11 curators, and we have expertise in most areas which is related to what we call visual art in different areas, Southeast Asian art, Chinese art. We have experts in Hong Kong art as well as in design. What we are missing mostly at the time is in an expert, a top expert in the field of moving image, and we need deeper expert in the case of ink art. But we definitely have a world-class team already in place for the areas where we have been making acquisitions. And then, of course, we will expand the scope when the further team members are on board. But thank you for your concern. Thank you.
主席，我想跟一跟呢，就係如果嗰個信託未成立呢，而家嗰啲捐贈或者購置嘅藏品係點樣去安排嘅呢？同埋嗰個策展嘅嗰個安排呢，將來係咪都會用一個即係不排除一個藝術責任制？即係上次Mr. Lynch 講過呢，將會好快。係會就住點樣去營運每一個場館呢，就會有個拍板啦。咁係咪呢個藝術責任制亦都不排除係喺 M+ 博物館嗰度實行呢？
Mr. Lynch, please.
Well, the trust will be established prior to the establishment of M+. I'm not sure I get the number of the question in terms of...
I'm just asking what is happening to those artwork before the trust is established?
Okay. Well, no, the majority of the SIG works are still held in a secure collection facility under our management now in Switzerland, and as soon as we have the secure facilities in Hong Kong, either temporarily or longer term within the context of the M+ Museum, those works will be removed back to Hong Kong. The works that we have bought outside the SIG collection are all in secure facilities in Hong Kong. But one of the issues we're grappling with is that it is actually cheaper for us to keep the works in a Swiss facility than it is to keep them in a secure facility in Hong Kong.
OK， 陳鑑林，最後一位。
主席，我有兩個觀察同埋一個問題。 首先呢，就係關於嗰個超支嗰個問題。剛才劉慧卿議員咧都問咗啦，即係當然係即係希望西九管理局可以將嗰啲資料咧財政嘅狀況咧係話俾我哋聽。但我亦都必須要講嘅咧就係喺當時咧係通過呢一條即係財政撥款嘅時候咧，216億咧，政府係斬釘截鐵咧係講過好多次咧，216億係冇問題嘅。可以建成整個西九嘅呢個文化區嘅，咁所以我哋要話俾管理局聽，同埋話俾政府聽咧，係必須要好好咁樣控制整個管理局而家西九文化區裏邊咧所有建設嗰個費用，千祈唔好出現呢一個就係洗腳唔抹腳嘅情況，同埋我哋而家見到嘅整個安排啊各方面嘅嘢咧。似乎都有好多甩漏嘅嘢，我哋好擔心嘅咧就係西九管理局以為咧，因為而家有好多嘅所謂建築嘅費用啊，各方面嘅嘢係增加咗之後咧，你俾個數字我哋，將來立法會會增加撥款。我希望話俾你聽嘅就係，我哋會好審慎控制呢一個咁樣嘅開支，我哋唔會輕易就係會應承呢一個咁樣嘅增加個撥款，咁我希望你哋可以清楚。第二個咧就係關於嗰個展品嗰個收購嗰個問題，我哋完全尊重你哋喺收購嘅過程裏邊嗰個表達嘅自由，但係表達自由咧，佢係有一個原則嘅。我相信你哋都清楚嘅咧，就係逢係不雅淫褻，甚至到有政治性、有侮辱性呢一類嘅藝術品咧，佢係唔屬於藝術品嚟嘅。咁必須要係好清楚有個大嘅原則。雖然間係表達自由，但係自由兩個字唔係突然間喺個天裏邊爆出嚟嘅，佢係經過人去揀選嘅。每一個人可能都有唔同嘅政治取向，咁所以我會希望咧，西九管理局作為一個獨立嘅一個文化藝術嘅管理嘅專業人才咧，係應該要好小心嘅衡量呢樣嘢。我哋完全無意作出任何嘅政治嘅干預，但係我希望你哋都能夠時刻記住咧，藝術就係藝術，文化就係文化。另外一點咧，我想問一問嘅就係，因為而家我哋係向一位當代嘅中國嘅藝術品嘅收藏家咧，嗰個希克博士係買咗47件嘅呢個收藏品，佢亦都贈送咗俾我哋咧係1000幾份嘅呢個收藏品。我想知道一下就係點解佢可以送1400幾份，但係又要賣47份咧？咁到底個過程係點嘅樣咧？佢可以送成13億咁嘅價值嘅呢個展品俾我哋，點解佢仲要賣億幾1億7000幾萬俾我哋咧？咁點解唔係全部送晒咧？另外就係你哋喺揀選嘅過程裏邊咧，係點樣做法咧？主席，
可唔可以簡略答到？如果唔可以就書面詳細答。
I'm very happy to answer this question, and it is a relevant question, I think, because it's not obvious. It is a practice that when a donation like this or a transaction on this scale happens internationally, when someone gives away his or her entire life's work and collection, as in this case, every museum in the world is out chasing this individual. And in this case, it was Tate, it was the Metropolitan Museum, it was MoMA, it was Guggenheim. They were all trying to get this collection. I think we were also in the position that we were actually a budding museum. We did not really exist at the time when we started these discussions. And there was what Dr. Sig asked for was a sign of commitment from any of these museums to show that actually you're prepared to make an effort. You just offer an effort. You just don't want and want everything. And this is something that's been tried before. There's a number of precedents for this also. The Count Giuseppe Panza in relationship to the Guggenheim Museum, Mr. Anthony Duffy in relationship to Tate and the Scottish National Gallery. This is a model that's been used in similar cases. And I think that psychologically, from the donor's side, he or she wants to see a sign of commitment, of proper commitment. And that's what we gave him. And he gave us works worth 1.3 billion, which is the envy of the entire international art world. So it was not an easy decision to take, but I think at the end of the day, I think it was a glorious decision that the board made, actually.
主席係咪因為我哋即係佢送嘅嘢俾我哋，我哋就要同佢買咧？因為係經過一個咩一個揀選嘅程序？
我諗咧嗰個書面答覆翻我哋嗰個即係程序啦，同呢位希克博士即係大家一齊由開始商討一個簡略個過程，咁同埋即係有冇透過點樣
reverse order? Now, it's in the reverse order that we purchased we purchased 47 works for a value of 179 million Hong Kong dollars, and he gave us 1,467 works at a value of 1.3 billion Hong Kong dollars. I think as it is not well understood in Hong Kong, the idea of philanthropic gifts is that the person who is giving determines the terms on which they make that gift, and then we went through the process, including approval by the West Kowloon board of the terms and conditions for that gift, and then that's what was negotiated. I guess the issue that we would hope to be establishing in response to your question around philanthropic gifts and the sorts of things that we would get is that we would be hoping to encourage major philanthropists in Hong Kong to be supporting these institutions in whatever way they can by either making donations, but we are dependent on them deciding to do that. I can't really ask Li Ka-shing to give all of his money to West Kowloon, but I would have no hesitation in asking him to give some of his money to West Kowloon.
咁至於嗰個 procedure 點樣咧，嗰個程序點樣咧，你都可以書面話翻俾我哋聽。我哋下一個議程，唔好意思啊，美芬議員，因為我哋講到最後兩位，因為今日已經即係超咗呢個議題超咗15分鐘啦嚇，唔好意思。咁你睇下下一個議題啊，早啲舉手。下一個議題咧就係關於西九個文化公園嘅發展情況。民政局有冇咩介紹？
九嘅公園呢，將會喺市中心開拓一個嶄新嘅綠化地帶，為音樂、舞蹈、劇場、藝術展覽同埋其他戶外嘅文化節目提供一個充滿活力氣息嘅場地。西九文化管理局呢，而家現正進入咗呢一個評審入圍設計隊伍提交嘅投標文件嘅階段。與此同時呢，為咗配合公園嘅第一期嘅落成呢，管理局呢現正着手去草擬嗰個附例嘅工作。亦都計劃咧喺呢一個附例嘅內容係具備嘅時候咧，係盡快去諮詢呢一個委員會嘅。咁就住今天嘅會議咧，管理局亦都係提交咗文件。而家我請西九文化管理局行政總裁連立志先生咧向各位去介紹。
好 ，Mr. Lee。
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The park is the third major piece of the project that is underway at the moment. We have commenced some initial works in terms of site investigation, the establishment of the tree nursery, but we are also continuing to do major events, including the M+ inflation event and a number of other events on the site. We will be making the decision to who will be the designers of the park over the course of the next coming weeks, and we are also, in response to the discussion that we had last year with LegCo, working on resolving the bylaws for the longer term for the park. That work's going on at the moment, and clearly, as the Deputy Secretary has said, we will bring those draft bylaws back to LegCo for further discussion. We will also discuss those draft bylaws with the District Council, and we will use the consultation panel under its new chairman to seek public views and to be able to make sure that the bylaws reflect the intentions that we have publicly put out, that the park is, that they are not excessively restrictive, they will not inhibit enjoyment of 23 hectares of this public space, and I expect SIDHO will be very happy with them by the time that they are resolved.
咁啊，請大家舉手提問。我諗
Very happy to take questions.
我諗附例嗰度咧，遲啲咧佢交咗上嚟咧，我哋先要詳細傾，好嘛？因為咧，大家都應該我建議啊，大家咧集中傾下咧嗰個設計啊、建築啊等等有關呢個硬件嗰個問題，即係咁請大家提問。而家舉咗手有梁美芬、陳婉娜、何秀蘭咁一路問一路舉手啦。每人都係4分鐘，連問連答。梁美芬議員，
係主席，就住嗰個公園草坪嗰個設計咧，我都係想跟進下咧，就係我哋好早咧就一直提希望咧就係多啲林蔭大道啦，而呢個呢啲嘅休憩地區咧，將來都接連到附近嘅一啲市區。咁呢一方面呢，我睇下嗰個落實程度係點，同埋係咪真係可以係林蔭小徑或者大道呢？我哋開頭就用林蔭大道嘅，後尾都即係將佢呢，就係無論佢係林蔭大道也好，林蔭小徑也好，呢一方面呢係現在進展係點？接連附近上次講嘅，譬如話柯士甸站啊咁樣，呢啲路會唔會通嘅呢？定係純粹係喺公園裏邊嘅步行徑咁？第二呢，就係單車徑啦。會唔會有呢一方面嘅考慮呢？咁第三呢，就係喺嗰個雕塑同埋裝置嗰方面呢，其實同剛才嗰個議題頭先同事討論到嘅呢都相關。即係有冇一個公眾參與喺度呢？當你哋選擇，即係譬如我哋去外國一啲城市呢，佢哋都會擺唔同嘅雕塑。咁有啲甚至係某啲喺當地出生嘅名設計家嘅一啲特色肖像咁樣，咁但係我哋喺選擇呢啲擺放物嘅時候，能唔能夠其實大家都有一個選擇喺度？咁喺公眾佢都會可能剔可以，佢唔係你有一個嘅調查，或者你有一啲嘅俾佢哋選擇，咁可能分數高啲，原來大家中意多啲嘅，你就會擺嗰度，因為你相對嚟講可能係好長期擺喺嗰度，而即係其實欣賞嘅都係公眾，亦都可能會更加代表呢係我哋嘅一個特色。咁咧就我亦都注意到咧，就係話喺即係似乎我一定都順便講埋啦，喺吸納當地人才嗰方面咧，你哋係一路係話咧有一個困難。呢啲困難你冇分析過咧，其實點樣可以係戰勝佢咧？係令到咧其實無論大大細細嘅呢啲工程項目或者設計項目咧，都可以令到當地一啲人才包括設計嘅人才啦，甚至佢熟悉環保工程嘅人才啦，佢都可以參與咧。
Thank you, Ms. Lung, for the question. The lawn will be, there will be many thousands of trees in the park, but the decision that we're about to make about the park design will determine the configuration of the space, what we have laid down as the things we want within the park. In regard to the art in the park, that will be a responsibility of Dr. Nitva's team to be both commissioning works to go into the park for long-term works. If you look at some of the Millennium Park in Chicago or the Olympic Park in London, where major pieces of commissioned artwork have been put in there, and that's a process that will continue as we develop the park itself. We are about to bring in the first of the schemes for bicycles that people will be able to use within the existing park facility, but we'll certainly be looking at bike access being available within the park under both the bylaws and under the practical side of how that's going to be achieved. We just have to recognise as part of the design that there are no cars on the site. Bikes will be probably the only form of transport other than your legs to get you around the site, except for the disabled. So that's an important step forward. And I think on your final point in regard to local talents, we are continually involved in looking for local talents across all of the areas of our activity, whether it be on the building side, on the arts side, or on the broader arts administration side. I think it was recognised in the Chief Executive's policy address a sum of some 150 million to help with the training of local arts administrators to both deal with the needs of West Kowloon, of LCSD and ADC. And so we are looking all the time. We have done surveys of local capacity and we'll continue to look at ways that can play to the local talents issue.
公眾參與嗰方面，我就係想聽清楚先。
有咩有關公眾參與？
I probably am reluctant to commit. I think the idea that the public can choose the artworks is something that I'm not prepared to do at this point, because I think Dr. Nitfer and his team would have a definite view on that. We'll clearly be communicating as we have all the way through public engagement. The park was described as the 18th cultural venue. It was the part of the project that received most public comment through the 3 stages of public engagement. And clearly we would be, we hope that with the event that's on the site over the coming 6 weeks, on the actual site of M+, I'm sure we will get lots of positive, but I'm sure we'll also get some negative comment, and we'll be able to use that as an interesting opportunity to inform future decisions.
我而家即係嗱喺藝術嘅選擇，我哋絕對相信專家嘅。只不過點解會特別要提呢個公共參與呢？因為呢，其實你哋可以係作為一個參考，起碼係一個參考，因為有時有一啲嘅肖像，可能對於當地嚟講，佢係唔接受，係嘛？你擺咗喺度，或者有突然間好多公眾話做咩你要擺呢樣嘢喺嗰度，咁你可以呢一方面呢，其實你就可以減少咗啦。你有呢個程序嘅話，咁可能某一啲肖像係你知道可能係當地人係唔係好接受嘅，咁你咪可以確保咧係一啲肖像擺咗喺度，係設計品係受歡迎同埋接納。
主席，嗱而家我睇嘅嗰啲圖咧，我就即係睇到個即係一個大概啫。就我剛才聽係阿 Michael 講話咧，短期內你哋會做個最後拍板嘅，我想清楚件事，係咪咧咁樣？第二件咧就我想提翻就話，因為成個西九咧係40公頃，一個好靚嘅我哋臨海地方，但我而家睇翻你啲圖咧，我就覺得。即係如果你構思裏邊有剛才單一徑，我唔反對嘅。另外就話沿海嘅邊嗰度咧，到底你個綠化係咪一路咁帶到去去到最盡尾咧？我又睇唔到喎。即係我見你只係去到某點上，當你去到 M+ 嗰度就停咗落嚟㗎。即係我覺得一個咁靚海邊，如果你伴以一啲好靚嘅樹咧，我覺得一個好舒服地方嚟嘅。即係我覺得你要嗰個設計上，你要善用海邊。同埋我哋香港城市人真係好想要啲空間行下等等，即係各種訴求有咧。咁呢個我亦都想問，一路去到東面嗰邊咧，你就因為有建築物，你就冇停咗落嚟。第二個就想問咧，呢個叫做幼樹苗圃啊，佔地都幾大。我想問佔幾多地啊？你個幼樹苗圃點樣做㗎？因為我都幾驚政府如果擺啲苗圃樹咧，好似我哋獅山公園咁樣咧，佔地好大㗎。我成日問點解佔咁大地啊？如果你梗係管理得唔好，直情到時就即係總之好精彩啦咁樣。咁就想問點解佔地咁大先？咁啊另外咧就我當然即係我諗啦，海邊放風箏都係個好事。但係當我唔堅持，我想提醒下大家，即係有個咁好海邊又唔使行車，飛機唔經過嘅，係咪諗下呢啲小型嘅嘢咧？咁我即係想提下，即係呢個內容豐富啫。嗱，我主要關心苗圃，關心個綠廊，唔該。
OK， 西九管理局打一答個苗圃。
或者可以打一答個苗圃一個出問題。個苗圃個目的咧就係話我哋早啲咧種定啲樹先咧，將來我哋嗰個成個公園起好嗰陣時咧，啲樹苗啊嗰啲種到佢咁大咧，係搬翻落去嗰個公園嗰度，即係唔係嗰個苗圃咧就係呢個 permanent 嘅，即係呢個係個臨時嘅。咁即係做咗呢幾年之後咧，啲樹大咗咧就會搬去擺翻落去嗰個。
你幫我寫住喺文字上寫住。我怕到時你揾康文署，佢要你預留一啲俾佢，咁就好精彩㗎。我想講，即係我覺得嗱，我同意嘅。 你而家喺個種嘅過程當中嘅地方擺啦，但個佔地幾大嘅而家？咁你當時將來點咧？咁呢個我覺得你清楚啲寫落先。咁你繼續。
好啊。再冇繼續答。
綠色廊。
個綠色廊嗰度咧，其實一路去到東面嘅，直去嘅。呢度我哋冇 show 到，就喺幅圖嗰度。因為成個海濱長廊咧係由西至東嘅。
OK。
整條嘅。
就唔會話去到
即係唔會斷咗㗎啦，一路直去嘅。
好啊，好啊。咁就係我諗啊，主席，我剛才問你係而家仲喺雪再傾嘛？自己最後拍板嘅係咪短期內拍板？我哋有冇機會睇？如果你拍板前你改變又點咧？我都想問啊，主席唔該。
係。咁有冇咩改變咧？拍板前會唔會
We will make the decision very soon of the design team, and that will be something that would be a very public piece of information in terms of the design. And just to go back to your question, part of the master plan that already exists for West Kowloon protects a 20-metre stretch of the waterfront around the whole 2.2 kilometres of the site. So that people will be able to get access to the water and be able to make sure they can do all of those things that they would want to do from the typhoon shelter end of the site all the way around to Canton Road.
OK， 主席，我又關心當你拍板嘅時候咧，如果有條件話咧，即係公開啊！我驚你理論上就唔會好大變嘅，但我希望就真係。如果有好大變，都要話翻俾我哋聽啦，好嘛？唔該。
OK， 咁啊，有咩變化就話翻俾本局本委員會聽啦，好嘛？咁跟住落嚟，下一位何秀蘭。
主席，嗱，成份文件呢，有一半係講個管理嘅附例嘅，所以我都係會問嗰個附例㗎啦。咁就喺舊年呢，就好快脆就將一啲附例呢。即係本來係康文署嘅咧，就變成係西九管理局自己裏邊嘅規例。咁我哋睇嘅時候咧，就發覺比康文署嗰啲附例仲辣嘅添。例如即係唔俾放風箏。咁但係咧，我哋都了解到有一啲活動，譬如話放模型飛機啊，可能係會影響公眾安全嘅。呢個係好小心，因為我哋過去都發生過一個意外，即係有人俾模型飛機咧係撞到，係重創嘅。咁所以呢，就今次文件就表達咗係會參考外國嘅公共空間嗰啲規管嘅法例嚟同我哋傾呢。呢個我表示歡迎，但係呢，我亦都擔心嗰個執行，因為呢，如果我哋就算做咗呢套附例係以寬鬆為主，正如頭先Mr. Lynch 講係以寬鬆為主。但係即係我哋執行嘅人可能係警隊嘅時候呢，就都好難寬鬆。你知我哋啲警隊而家越嚟越神經好緊張，即係喐下就即係放噴霧嚇。咁而一個執行規管嘅隊伍呢，係有一啲機構文化要慢慢去建立。我俾一個例子，好似我哋立法會嘅保安隊伍咁，我哋對傳媒呢係非常之友善寬鬆。但係一搬過嚟新大樓，因為換咗一個工作環境呢，都忽然間變咗態度，要做翻1年先能夠調教翻過嚟。所以呢個機構文化呢係好重要。我想即係問西九管理局，就係佢哋將來係揾乜嘢人做呢個執行規例呢？呢度有提到授權管理局或其代理人，咁呢啲代理人係乜嘢呢？咁我希望西九呢係可以參考立法會嗰個模式，我哋自己有自己嘅保安，有自己嘅機構文化，真係對示威嘅市民同埋傳媒朋友呢都係非常之寬鬆。但係到某一個程度覺得自己係不能夠執行秩序嘅時候呢，然後就係請即係警隊，冇辦法啦，到時都要請警隊去幫手。咁我希望西九管理局呢係可以揾到一個真係能夠落實呢個寬鬆使用公共空間嘅行政方法出嚟。咁或者西九管理局即係而家有冇一個即時回應呢？同埋而家中間係咪仍然以規管工地安全嘅方法去規管呢個臨時公園呢
？It's really important, as I've said before here and in a lot of the public discussion, that the park creates a really special venue for the people of Hong Kong. Clearly, the culture of how we run the park is an important part of the development of both the design, our workforce, the existing facilities management that we have as our responsibility. And as we made out, the first sets of rules were to deal with the transition from LCSD management of part of the site to the fact that it's a very complicated, potentially dangerous site at various times in terms of the building projects that are going on. But we will be very much involved in the management and the setting up of those arrangements. We would only envisage the role of the police being involved on the site if there were extraordinary circumstances. We believe that we will physically set up the park in a way that's going to work. We will manage the park and the facilities in the park in a way that works, and that and we have already established through the hundreds of thousands of people over the course of the last year that have visited the park, including big events like the Poon Choi for 26,000, the Clock and Flap, the Free Space Festival, that we've been able to do it in a way which I think has caused very little discomfort or unhappiness for the participants, whether they were coming for free or whether they were buying tickets. And we would see that as very much the way forward, which I hope will make you very happy, bearing in mind your long-standing interest in this issue.
嗱，我想補充一句啊，呢個唔係你滿意嘅問題，你哋係提早咁樣係廢除咗個附例，而又自己制定自己嘅規則去管理個地方咧，其實係唔啱嘅，因為你已經係使到而家呢個咧冇法例去管理地。我希望下次你就唔可以咁做，因為喺一次會議咧，所有嘅議員都係指責你哋呢個做法嘅。OK， 下一位張麗雲。
No, I think we had a long discussion of it. Last time we put in place.
Stop. OK. Next. 張麗雲。
唔該啊，主席。嗱，咁我咧就有個建議啦，因為直到而家咧，我睇到咧就係嗰個公園咧都未有一個名稱嘅，咁咧就所以你哋暫時咧就暫時叫住中央公園。咁我喺呢度咧做一個建議啦，因為既然你呢個地方都叫西九龍文化區啦，咁會唔會考慮直頭乾脆將你個公園嘅名稱叫做文化公園呢？咁會唔會更貼切啊？咁呢個係一個建議。咁另外咧就係有關呢一個圖設計，因為呢個圖佢可能係一個暫時位點樣啦，即係比較簡單，但係咧就所以我睇唔到太多嘢。咁啊，啱啱一個幼樹苗圃嗰度咧，就陳議員已經亦都提出咗啦。但我都係睇到而家咧，你廁所咧就得2個啫喎，係咪2個地點啊？啱唔啱啊
？Well, we have many locations for toilets for individual events, but with 2 fixed locations.
OK， so 你話即係意思係仲有好多細嗰啲臨時廁所嘅，係咪？係咪咁呢？ Because there's 2 big locations, right? You mean that this is 2 big toilet? There's still some small one or something?
We still have existing permanent
Mr. Lynch 唔好對話好
facilities on the site.
冇咧？俾佢問完晒之後，我示意你講好冇咧？
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
你繼續問啦，張小姐，你問完未？
係咪就係呢？即係好簡單啫。有幾因為我見到係個距離好遠啊。係咪中間仲有啲小嘅洗手間呢？
係咪中間仲有少少洗手間 ？Mr. Lynch.
We will have toilet facilities in all different parts of the park when the park is designed. At the moment, this is the map you're referring to is the map that guides us through both the building process and the temporary uses of the park. So we still have permanent toilets down on the waterfront side of the site, and we then put in, for individual events, we put in temporary toilets for each of those events on the site. You will see next week with the event there are toilet facilities in the vicinity of the actual event itself.
OK.
咁我另外我就想再跟住問一下咧，就係有關呢個附例嘅權力。咁啊，附例權力嗰度咧，而家係
其實民政或者係民政有人喺度啦，咁我想問一問，而家除咗係西九呢一度咧，就想將呢一個海濱呢個長廊同埋呢個公園係交俾佢管理，仲有冇其他嘅情況係即係單獨撥出嚟嘅，係俾另一個局去管理啊，或者係咩咧？冇嚇。
喺咧就例如好似海洋公園咁，佢都有自己嘅附例嘅。
係，
咁即係佢嗰個範圍就即係由佢自己去管理。
係啊係啊，不過我就想咧就係我即係可以想像到啦，就因為佢個同海洋公園嘅情況唔同，海洋公園好歸一㗎。即係包住咗咁樣嘅，咁但係佢呢一個地方咧，就係牽涉到係海濱長廊啦。咁咧因為好多附近啲居民咧係朝早過去做晨運嘅，咁就你可能要好早開或者要好夜。咁你係咪全天候開放式咧？咁因為其他海濱長廊你可以開放噶嘛，夜晚可以行下㗎，瞓唔着都可以出嚟散步啊嘛。咁你度係咪會咁樣做咧？咁就我啱啱咧就聽到何議員話有位議員話呢一個係唔俾做呢個放風箏啊咁樣。咁我想知道何解，同埋係喺我文件我揾唔到。咁我知係咪呢個已經定咗一啲嘢咧？咁或者喺文件呢度未有咧，或者我未睇到咧？唔該。
邊位答？阿賴太。
好啊。咁佢嗰個開放時間呢，其實就現時喺嗰個臨時個用途嚟講呢，佢哋都係即係參照翻過往康文署管理嗰個海濱長廊嗰陣時嗰個開放時間嘅。咁就應該都係朝頭早6點去到夜晚11點咁樣嘅嚇。咁就即係維持翻嘅。咁將來嚟講就亦都即係西九管理局亦都會係要考慮翻即係用家嗰個意見去定嗰個開放時間啦。
西九冇補充啊？
Just add something. Clearly, at the moment, it is only practical for us to go from 6 in the morning until 11 at night. The issue you've raised will be something we'll be discussing as we move to the design phase. And I have to say, I'm not entirely sure why we don't let kites fly. It's probably something that I need to go and do some more research on to be able to ascertain if that's a burning issue for the people of Hong Kong. I may well be able to find a way to resolve that issue, at least on part of the site.
我諗呢個你翻去自己諗啊，因為係你自己制定話唔準放風箏㗎嚇。OK， 要俾阿葉麥。好，下一位梁家傑副主席。
好啊，多謝主席。主席，我想問一問呢，就係嗰個關於嗰個種啲咩樹同埋植物嗰度咧。因為咧就之前都有我哋嘅議員關注到咧，因為嗰度係一個即係填海區啦，咁會唔會係有某一啲植物係不適合喺嗰度生長嘅咧？咁我就知道你哋而家有一個幼樹苗圃喺度啦，咁亦都已經試種咗一啲品種㗎啦。咁可唔可以交代一下，即係而家嗰個進度係點？即係第日我哋喺呢個公園度見到啲咩植物咧？咁呢個第一點啦。第二咧，亦都想跟一跟呢，就係關於嗰個西九管理局咧，就住管理呢一個公園啊，即係你根據你個西九管理局文化區管理局嗰個條例，你係有權制定嗰個有關嘅管理嘅附例嘅。咁嗰度嘅進度又係點咧？咁我想聽埋啫，主席。
好啊，請答。Mr. Lynch.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you. On the trees, the whole point of the consortia of landscape designers and park designers that we're using will be very much addressing the fact that it is a reclaimed site and that their designs will incorporate the capacity to be able to make sure that the trees grow and live and prosper. And if you look at the nursery site, it's both to grow trees to get them to an advanced stage, but it's also a research and development facility for a fact that, I think, that is a piece of water that's been reclaimed, and from that point of view, it poses some real challenges, both in terms of climate, environment, and sustainability of what we put on the site, and that's clearly one of the priorities in the period leading up to, the completion of the park design and the park construction. And then on your second point,
主席，第一點我都跟一跟就係，即係 Are you happy with the progress？ I mean the research and development. The research and development.
Well, the nursery is just being set up, and from that point of view, I think we've got period of time to be able to take advantage of that research and development facility to make sure what we do is going to work.
主席，我想問第二個問題，請我答。
邊個答第二個問題？唔重複啊。
On the bylaws issue, we will be, we have indicated we will bring the completed draft of the bylaws back to discuss with the LegCo. I think it's clearly something that I may have misunderstood in the first discussions of the importance, and clearly we recognise that. We've had ongoing discussions with HAB around that issue, and we'll make sure that as soon as we've got that completed, we're doing the research project on a number of major international parks in various parts of the world, and we look forward to resolving that issue alongside the time that the park is properly open to the public. In the interim, we've had to have a set of rules to guide both our team and potential users of the site.
If I could have an indication of what the timetable is like for that bylaw making process.
Well, I guess what we're looking at is trying to do it as fast as we can, but they won't come into play for probably, the first part of the park won't open for at least 18 months. So they wouldn't be so there's plenty of time for further discussion here and in the other appropriate places.
多謝。咁啊，我補充咧，你個 bylaw 咧，你曾經講係13、14年咧就要做好嘅，所以你應該喺嚟緊呢個年度，即係而家呢個年度咧，一定要做好啊，而唔係話好多時間嘅，你應該要記住啦，好嘛？下一位，劉慧卿唔喺度，咁有冇其他委員問？如果冇啊，我問。係我問咗先啦，你第二輪。我想問啊，跟進啊副主席嘅問題咧，你而家所話研究啲樹咧？即係我哋好擔心嘅，因為嗰笪地方咧係好大風，唔似嗰啲土壤係填海，即係做乜都死。即係我唔知點解你哋會揀呢個啦，揀咗有冇計啦。咁好唔好？你哋做咗一個研究之後，未去買之前都可以徵詢康文署啊，甚至好多專家，因為我哋康文署好有呢啲豐富嘅經驗。即係你話翻俾我哋本委員會、本小組委員會聽咧，你哋會揀選乜嘢樹木，點樣安排？因為我哋好擔心嗰個維護費用啊，你持續性嘅維護費用咧係好高呢樣嘢。第二咧就係話，你而家呢個設計咧已經係舊年咧12月28號已經開始收集啦，咁亦都係收唔到我哋最近呢2次會議對於嗰個費用個 concern 啦，嗰個關注啦，因為個高，但係我哋咧雖然你個設計裏邊內容咧就冇話將呢個我唔知啊，有冇話將呢個費用啊、成本費用咧係擺到好重要嘅位置，擺高咗分。但係我覺得呢樣嘢都係我哋要去考慮嘅呢樣嘢。又冇新加一啲嘢啦，新加咗啲嘢又有一個藉口又攞多啲錢啦，呢啲我哋都好擔心嘅呢樣嘢。咁希望咧就喺你哋唔知咩時間，你話俾我聽咩時間你會俾到大概呢個費用。係估算到係幾多俾我哋？咁如果太多嘅時候咧，我哋真係要考慮下，再係咁樣去設計嘅時候咧，無休止咁去即係攞錢咧，我哋覺得咧呢樣嘢咧係一個非常恐怖嘅情況，好嘛？你哋樹木嗰度第一問題，樹木嗰度可唔可以答覆？一定要翻嚟俾我哋做好個詳細研究先。OK。
I think in terms of the park, it's a much more controlled part of the project than the 17 other buildings on the site. So from our point of view, as soon as we've resolved the design, we will be able to do that. We have a increasingly clear view of that, but you need the design. There are a range of issues that impact on the park. As you know, Mr. Chairman, there's a Western Harbour Tunnel, there's the Airport Express, there are a range of other complications that mean that we have to address some infrastructure issues. The issue of the basement under the other end of the building clearly create issues for us, and we're in discussions with the government on those issues at the moment, and that will come back as part of the overall costing.
即係樹木嗰度冇問題係嘛？我見到李生都合頭，即係你會同康文署或者香港嘅外地嘅專家研究下呢度種啲咩適合嘅植物。
主席係我哋好關心嗰啲樹嘅，當然啦。頭先你講得好啱，嗰度係好大風，我哋要同康文署亦都有啲專家睇嘅。
OK， 咁咧就我冇提問啦。第二輪要問嘅可以繼續舉手。第二輪蔣麗芸。
好啊，唔該主席。我淨係想問一個問題咧，就係喺嗰個文件佢第8、第9段咧，咁咧就係佢而家管理局咧就有一啲地方咧係即係定有個叫租用有臨時有個活動區嘅一啲甄選準則㗎。咁我想知道咧就過去租出多唔多咧？咁或者係你哋嘅收費又點樣咧？咁咧就同埋直到目前為止，你哋個收入又有幾多咧
？OK， 答一答啦。
That's the next item, isn't it, Mr. Chairman?
哦 ，OK， 下一個先至答你啦，仲有冇其他問題
？OK。
如果冇咧，我哋就完咗呢個議程冇，下一個咧就係關於呢個西九文化區嘅計劃建築工程嘅展開前，西九文化區嘅用地管理同埋使用情況。請舉手。或者我就當蔣麗芸頭先嘅問題係第一條問題啦。
我啱啱個問題，你有冇聽到咧？既然有聽到，我唔使再問一次啦。咁慳翻啲時間，你直接答我啦，唔該。
好。
I understand, Dr. Chang, your question relates to the selection criteria that we use for allowing events on the site. And I guess in summary, we look at the key criteria outlined under paragraph 8 of the paper: nature and impact of the event, site availability and feasibility, and the credibility and track record of the organisers. And we've applied that to the over 50 events, I think, that we've conducted over the course of the last year, I think quite successfully, and we've been able to utilise a good mix of what are not-for-profit activities related to arts and cultural activity, as well as some commercial activities that help contribute to being able to do the free activities that we've been able to undertake on the site.
So is there any income?
Yes, I think we stated in that over the course of the last year we've taken about $4 million for projects that we've conducted on the site, and all of that money has then been put into the free activities that we've taken place, things like the Free Space Festival and the Chinese Orchestra Festival and the M+ inflation event, which will open this week. So we're using any income from the use of the park to contribute to being able to put a range of free activity on the site to make sure that we attract audiences, but we also build the awareness of what the park is ultimately going to be.
咁你點樣可以分到咧？有啲可以係免費俾佢哋用嘅場地，有啲咧就要收錢咧。
係得一得。
I guess we take somewhat of a Robin Hood approach. I use the example of the wedding event, which has had already some discussion in this chamber, where we charged the people putting the wedding. It was not on a public part of the actual site. We charged them a substantial amount of money to be able to then use that money to contribute to the free activities that take place. We look at the business proposal from any of the people. If it's a community organisation, if it's a charitable organisation, then or an arts and cultural organisation, or one of our events, we are very lenient in terms of how we do that. If it's a film event, we are very actively encouraging using those events. But if it is a commercial event, we think that the people should make an appropriate contribution so that we can pay for some of the other events that we want to do.
So who makes the decision?
My executive team, under my leadership, make the decisions on who gets in there, and if it exceeds a certain amount of money, that gets referred up to either the development committee or the board.
I suggest that you should make I suggest you should make clearly outlined so then all your staff can follow. Thank you.
Mr. Stop. 陳家樂。
多謝主席。頭先呢就提過一個嘅婚禮。咁咧喺11月中咧就有傳媒報道咧，就有一個富豪嘅婚宴咧，就喺西九文化區咧就舉行。咁我其實都關心嘅，咁所以我都寫一封信咧，係俾呢個管理局嘅主席，亦都即係我哋嘅政務司司長林鄭月娥，係11月23號嘅信，到今日佢都未覆我。咁我都好想知道咧，透過呢個會議搞清楚呢一件事，到底係點樣申請，向邊一個申請？邊個去負責審批？乜嘢嘅條件？同埋咧呢一個婚宴嘅收支嘅情況係點樣？我希望咧就我哋嘅關注咧係在於會唔會西九文化區嘅某個部分嘅屬於公眾嘅空間同埋我哋嘅屬於公眾嘅一個資源咧係被私有化，係俾人咧係攞嚟做自己嘅富豪嘅派對或者咧係一啲嘅活動，因為如果就咁睇咧，照計嚟講咧，我都想問啊，如果呢個此例一開，係咪即係話西九文化管理局因為要用頭先剛才所講嘅 Robin Hood 嘅做法，即係劫富濟貧咧？我理解下劫富濟貧嘅做法，就係話你而家可以啦，向全世界公開話咧，只要嚟我哋嗰度，只要你有錢，我就會幫你安排咧婚宴。而講緊嘅數目咧，係可以同你咧係逐次去傾。我理解咧，西九傳訊同埋呢一個嘅推廣嘅行政總監咧，陳家耀先生喺回應傳媒訪問嘅時候咧，係好驕傲地講咧，我哋今次賺咗好多錢嘅。咁可唔可以都講埋咧嗰個次你賺咗幾多錢？主席。
OK， 請答。
I think I've already said in regard to the wedding. Please do not misunderstand me in regard to that event. The Robin Hood comment was meant to be a reflection of the fact that that is the one event that we've done like that has achieved a substantial amount of money. We received in excess of 1 million Hong Kong dollars, but there was much more money spent on the event in the creation of that event. We looked at that event alongside the criteria. You will see in Annex 2 of the paper the document that is publicly available for use on the site, what the application procedure is, what the eligibility is, and what the reasons that we outline. They then have to provide that to us. That is considered by my executive team on a regular basis. It is consistent with the permitted uses under the STT. And from our point of view, what we're looking at is a balanced mix of activities, the ability to generate income to cover the operating expenses, which were not given under the endowment, and I guess to create some sense of what the future of the site is going to be, that there will be a mix of cultural and commercial activities. In regard to the wedding event, they had brought in major entertainment players from Canada, and they needed to create a very specific public space. It did not obstruct the normal use of the site by the public. And if I go back to my previous experience of running venues in London and in Australia, at the Sydney Opera House we used to make a lot of money to contribute to the artistic program from running weddings and similar activities. And so I don't think we have any in principle objection as long as there is a benefit to the broader community, or that we can run events like the Free Space Festival, which we do.
主席啊，佢嗰度咧係講緊個人申請咧，一般咧係不 獲考慮嘅。咁所以嗰個嘅婚禮到底係一個乜嘢類型性質嘅申請，可唔可以講清楚？
你講清楚嗰次賺咗100萬嘅婚禮咧，係一個集體嗰個婚禮活動啦，抑或係私人嘅婚禮活動咧？
It was not a private application. It was done by a major. I think the Hong Kong economy gained some $10 million from this wedding. From our point of view, we only got $1 million. I wish I'd probably asked for more, but it was done by a major consortium of production companies in Hong Kong who went through the relevant approval process and provided us with that information, and we made the decision to go ahead on that basis.
So the application was submitted by a consortium, but eventually it turned out to be a wedding for a Russian-Chinese couple, right? Correct?
Correct.
You think there's anything wrong with that idea?
What,
No?
the idea
I
of
mean,
a
the
Russian
wed-
marrying a Chinese couple, or
No, I mean the fact that you're holding a wedding.
well, I wasn't holding the wedding. It was in a non-public part of the space, and we rented it out. And my simple view is that the $1 million that we received from running the wedding was then invested into the Free Space Festival, where we brought 20,000 people there over the weekend in December, and we were able to use that $1 million to contribute to the artistic program for the Free Space Festival. Unless there are in principle objections, I don't see any problem with the idea of being able to do appropriate commercial activity there to ensure that we're able to do big events for the public. In the same way, we have charged a number of organisations that are commercial organisations that are making money, different levels of charge to make sure that those events take place on the site, but that they're not at a disadvantage.
我諗時間都夠啦，你都說服唔到我哋，因為你之前嘅即係規則就話唔準租俾私人嘅活動，但係而家你見到見錢眼開，又見到人哋俾100萬，你又租俾人哋去，咁我諗你翻去再諗清楚，睇下點樣去搞清楚呢件事，係咪話你以後都會好彈性處理，只要有錢你就有得傾㗎啦，咁樣啊，咁呢樣你自己再諗一諗，再答翻我哋啦，好嘛？下一位何秀蘭。
唔該，主席。我相信西九管理局咧都要吸取上一趟嗰個經驗，即係好好地去釐清自己一啲租用場地嘅規管。雖然我哋見到咧就譬如香港藝術中心，即係灣仔嗰邊咧，佢都有透過租用場地，甚至係租俾一啲餐廳去得到一啲經常性嘅收入。但係呢啲規則咧，我相信係要寫得好清楚，亦都係要同公眾諮詢，咁定到一個準則，唔好俾人哋覺得咧就用咗公帑同埋公眾嘅地方去俾私人去做自己嗰個慶祝活動，呢個係非常之重要嘅。希望西九管理局明白。咁主席，我就要問第4段嘅，我見到佢咧就話試行一個租用單車自動系統，我就好開心見到呢個。但係咧，我一個意見一個問題，意見咧就係請西九就不要忘記兒童喺呢個自動租用單車系統嗰度咧，就唔好淨係得啲好高嘅單車，因為西九係一家大細去嘅地方，就一定要有一啲細價啲，俾啲細路哥咧都可以同爸爸媽媽大家一齊喺西九嗰度踩單車周圍行。咁希望西九管理局記得。第二呢，就好不幸呢，香港雖然係一個好安全嘅城市，但係我哋亦都係一個渠蓋都有人叫佢賣嘅城市。咁呢啲有價值嘅東西呢，係會被偷取，係會唔見嘅。咁所以呢個自動單車系統呢，我哋喺第二度見到呢就好方便嘅，入一個硬幣或者入錢入去呢，就可以掹咗出嚟，試到啱，咁然後攞走就去第2點嗰度呢，去到目的地啦，就大家好守規矩擺翻入去。咁但係我哋香港呢，真係渠蓋都有人叫噶嘛，咁我哋點樣防止呢啲單車踩出西九去到其他地方呢？咁可唔可以同我哋介紹一下呢個試行系統係點嘅呢？
OK， 講一講個系統。
We will take either your credit card or your octopus card or your Hong Kong identity card, and we will make sure that you comply with the laws and that you can't steal the bikes.
即係唔收錢嘅，就一定要拍卡。OK， 即係呢個另一方面，大家又要即係諗翻自己嗰啲私隱啦。咁請即係西九管理局喺呢個試行租用單車系統有多啲細節嘅時候咧，都請同我哋交代翻啊！唔該，主席。
OK， 有冇回應？如果冇 ，OK。咁下一位劉慧卿委員。
多謝主席。主席唔好意思嚇，頭先嗰度我唔喺度嚇，因為好多人想問聽日四川嗰個撥款啦嚇。主席啊，我就同意頭先你同埋同事講咧，就係話佢哋租用嗰啲場地咧，佢要講翻清楚嗰個準則啦。頭先連立志先生講又話有啲係私人嘅，有啲係公共嘅，咁我都唔係好清楚。即係你唔好俾人哋有個印象，即係你哋裏邊係好混亂啊，或者有啲即係做有啲唔應該做嘅嘢啦。咁我希望你呢度可唔可以解釋清楚啲？即係其實如果你做啲嘢去揾到啲錢去做啲更大嘅嘢咧，可能未必係有問題嘅。但係你點樣搞咯？同埋個準則係咪大家都知道？咁呢度咧，我相信越清楚係好。如果大家都知道係啱嘅，咁咪去做咯。如果係唔好嘅、唔恰當嘅咧，就唔好做。咁就另外咧，就係嗰個呢度提到嗰個通達性咧，主席，即係成個場地咧，我哋都係一路都係好關心嘅。真係你好好嘅嘢喺裏邊都冇用嘅。如果啲人唔識去唔到，咁所以咧，我希望你哋做嘅時候都諗多啲，有冇啲係即係有啲嗰啲電梯啦，即係嗰啲自動行人嗰啲，即係唔使行得咁辛苦啊，或者有冇車去車啲人啊，嗰啲即係唔會污染嗰啲車，同埋好多牌啊。周圍擺晒啲牌，令到啲人可以睇到，唔會喺度行冤枉路。我覺得呢啲設計都係非常之，即係令一個好友善、好舒服嘅環境，令到人喺好容易知道自己想去邊度就去到。咁我請你哋答一答啊，唔該。
OK。西九 ，Mr. Lynch。
Well, you know, Ms. Lau, that accessibility is one of our key concerns, but clearly we're not in a position through temporary use to do anything other than be able to transport people to the site, make sure they have a safe and pleasant experience. But as a part of the design of the park, the whole issue of accessibility is one of the key criteria for the park designers, and we'll be continually looking at that issue. In regard to your first point, what we were saying is that it wasn't public issue, is that it wasn't on the waterfront space that the public is kept open for the public, either through the preparation or on the actual event itself. It was done for one night in regard to the wedding event, and then the public was able to access the normal parts of the site that they have access to the next day.
I don't understand, Chairman. So there is a public area and a private area in which certain individuals can get access with money. Please explain clearly.
No. When I'm talking about there was a public part. There are parts of the site that can be used for events, but they're of no interest to the public. The area around the Airport Express exhaust, or the area around the Western Tunnel exhaust, clearly are not sort of public spaces. But the space that we used for the event that Dr. Chan's already questioned us about was not inhibiting public use to the waterfront facilities.
Chairman, I don't think that's the point. The point is whether there are rules which are equal and fair. And I don't care whether it's near the waterfront or not. But if that area is open to any member of the public, then it should be made accessible. I don't understand your explanation. Chairman, this is not fair. That's why members have asked you to go back and to revise the rules, whether it's for using the area near the waterfront or in other locations. It should be fair and should be open. And now I don't think you have answered my question. I'm sorry, Mr. Lynch.
I can't let parts of the site that might be dangerous or might, in terms of children or public access, we have the site has been controlled in that sense for much longer than we've had any involvement with it. Now, there are fences, there are parts of the site that are fenced off. There were commercial arrangements on the site for many years in terms of access points that you could get to. All I'm saying is that in regard to that specific event, we did not restrict the public use of the site. and that was the point I made.
總裁啊，我諗咧，我俾多時間你答一答咧。而家議員關心咧，唔係話你喺邊個地方，而係你嗰個即係公平性。即係而家你話你本應制定嘅例話唔俾私人用嘅。你俾我講埋先好嘛？佢唔俾私人用嘅，但係而家你因為話人哋可以俾到錢100萬搞呢個活動，咁你覺得有錢賺你就用啦。咁會唔會我想用但係我俾得10萬啫，你俾唔俾我用咧？你又唔俾我用咯喎。咁你究竟個規則喺邊度咧？你可唔可以講清楚
？Well, that's not, Mr. Chairman, that's not true. I didn't say that. What I said was that we do not allow individual applications to avoid the idea of it becoming an individual. You know, they have to be submitted in the form in accord with Annex 2 of the paper, which I think is quite straightforward. If members don't feel it's straightforward enough, then we can provide further information, but it's quite extensive in terms of the applications. And what we have said, applications from individuals will generally not be considered. And from that point of view, that's the issue in terms of we have not said that it would not be used for private use. My earlier comments apply that if we can use it publicly or use it privately to contribute to being able to run events like the Bamboo Theatre Project, the Free Space Festivals and the other activities, then we see that as an appropriate mix of activities. And if we can't use it for private use, then we won't be able to do the free activities on the site.
我明白啦，即係話你自己一個人去申請就唔得嘅，或者你經過一間公司一個團體去申請咧，都係搞私人嘢就得嘅咁樣。
唔係主席，其實佢咧就話搞嗰啲嘢就揾到啲錢，可以去做其他大啲嘅嘢。咁呢個未必係一定係唔啱嘅。咁佢搞嗰啲私人嗰啲嘢啦去揾錢嗰啲嘢咧，都應該係開放俾公眾嘅。邊個有錢就去用佢嗰個地方，就俾多啲錢，佢賺到啲錢咧就搞俾其他人。咁你呢啲嘢要攞嚟同大家講咯，就即係話其實你有錢你去搞嗰啲都係有啲規限嘅喎，唔係個人嘅喎。咁呢個都係開放嘅，邊個想去搞咁你俾多啲錢啦，我哋賺到100萬、400萬，我哋就可以搞多啲嘢。咁你俾個規矩大家知清楚咯。
OK， 咁我諗呢個係賴太。或
者我補充一點咧，即係因為據我了解咧，其實就即係佢哋其中一個考慮咧，就係去辦呢一啲嘅節目嘅機構咧，係咪有個足夠嘅過往嘅經驗啊、能力啊，去即係舉辦呢一啲咁嘅節目咧咁所以即係從嗰個考慮咧，就所以一般即係如果係個人咁，佢哋就唔會考慮咁或者即係我哋都聽取議員嗰個意見，就係話點樣可以將嗰個考慮啊個準則係可以寫得清楚啲，咁俾大家都知道咁樣或者我哋請管理局翻去考慮下啦。
OK， 副主席梁議員，
多謝主席。其實咧，我諗Mr. Lynch 都應該明白咧，自從即係上次喺上一屆議會臨近尾聲嘅時候咧，即係引起好大嘅迴響咧，就係你突然間刊憲，就話將呢一個公眾遊樂場地附例咧係停用於呢一個西九管理局所管理嘅嗰啲場地咧，而又代之以一套咧係冇呢一個法律效力嘅一啲你自行制定嘅規則。我相信你應該其實明白嗰個關注啦。個關注咧就係因為你管理嗰個場地係公共嘅資源嚟㗎嘛。咁如果你係冇一套客觀準成嘅規則呢，咁就好容易俾人覺得係唔係我識得 Mr. Lynch 就容易啲呢？咁即係呢個咧就係我諗個關注點咧。咁如果你用呢個角度嚟睇一睇，你而家俾我哋嘅附件2呢，其實裏邊有好多嘅寫法呢，都可以有好不一樣嘅解釋㗎，即係譬如你話嗰個可以租用嗰個臨時即係臨時用途啦，嗰啲團體係乜嘢呢？咁你就話根據社團條例註冊嘅機構啊、公司條例成立機構啊等等。咁但係呢一個表列呢，就唔應該係 一個即係完全不能夠再增加嘅表嚟㗎嘛。It is not exhaustive 啊。咁如果唔係已經盡列㗎啦，咁你究竟仲有啲咩人可以去申請呢？咁因為你頭先我啲同事都質疑啦，即係你喺呢個申請資格最後嗰一點呢，你就話個人申請一般不獲考慮。咁係咪如果我透過一間製作公司申請，我就喺嗰度做一個人 show 都冇問題？咁嗱，呢啲咧就係我諗你要明白，即係我哋嘅關注，而我哋都係殷切期望咧，譬如頭先講嘅嗰個附例可以盡早去制定啦。喺制定嘅時候，應該咧係從一個客觀準繩，大家睇落去覺得公道公平，亦都係有一啲客觀嘅準則嚟到去監察住你行事，咁嚟到去作為一個原則啦。咁所以我首先第一就問下Mr. Lynch， 你明唔明白我哋嘅關注咧？即係當我頭先咁樣試圖再解釋一次俾你聽。第二呢，我想問下，就係你喺明白咗呢個需要之後呢，你會點樣係盡快回應我哋呢個委員會委員嘅關注同埋對你嘅期許呢？
I certainly understand the concerns of members about the use of public space. It's always one of the much debated issue within my management team about what should be there. But I guess overall, if you look at the range of activities that have taken place on the site over the time that we've been doing this, I think there is only one wedding, and from that point of view, I think it has taken up a disproportionate time of the concern. Clearly, we will be very much guided by the concerns. Clearly, the public events have been much more important, especially the free public events, in terms of what has taken place on the site. And from our point of view, we will be very judicious in making the decisions going forward.
主席，最後一句咧，whether you have promulgated and are practicing a set of rules that have objectivity and have objective certainty is always tested by non-compliance rather than compliance.
Yes.
I hope you understand this.
I defer to your legal expertise on that issue.
主席，我唔係想對話，不過即係I really urge upon the authority to take on board the concerns of this joint committee and to come up with a set of objectively certain rules ASAP. 多謝主席。好，
多謝。
OK， 跟住落嚟謝偉銓。
多謝主席。當然利用呢個西九呢啲場地作為一啲臨時嘅活動咧，即係使到多啲人公眾咧參與咧，就呢個係一個好事嚟嘅。有次即係我哋係成個西九都希望咧，就係即係多啲公眾人士可以享用參與，同埋咧即係亦都利用呢個即係呢個發展，令到嗰啲即係藝術即係參與啊，尤其是本地咧可以多啲發揮。咁我唔知即係因為呢個臨時咧，我唔知道即係管理局會唔會考慮咧？尤其是而家我哋越嚟越多一啲關於喺個設計，包括即係戲曲中心啊，或者而家 M+ 啊等等。咁其實喺嗰啲設計嚟講咧，可唔可以考慮一啲展示下？即係臨時嘅展示一啲，等公眾知道，即係我哋使咁多錢，其實即係做咗揀咗嗰啲嘢係點樣嘅，咁等佢盡早即係認識嚇，即係呢方面咧，其實係我哋做緊嘢，同埋一啲進展啊，即係利用，即係因為你其實呢個係一個臨時嘅，但係你將來都即係大家都期待呢個西九咧發展之後會點咧咁樣，咁唔知會唔會咁做咧？唔該，主席。
請答一答 ，Mr. Lynch。
Well, thank you for the suggestion, but you will be aware, I think, that 100,000 people came to see the exhibition on the Zishu in the Bamboo Theatre precinct during the period around Chinese New Year. And clearly we see it as very important as part of that public engagement that in making sure that people know what's coming. And we deliberately set the exhibition alongside the Bamboo Theatre project because next year the Bamboo Theatre project will move to the park part of the site where the wedding was, and then we will hopefully have created the sense of expectation because we will be building on the Canton Road site. So take that on board with the future facilities. We'll be making sure that people understand what's coming. It's a very important part of our new website and a range of the communication matters that we're looking at the moment. Thank you.
Chairman, I think this would be a very good proposal, and in particular, if M+ would include architecture as one of the visual arts, then probably is a good way to promote. And I would most appreciate the management had done so. Thank you, Chairman.
Architecture is actually one of the areas that the museum will be covering.
OK， 下一位咧我哋第一輪講完啦，第二輪咧就有得陳家樂，咁陳家樂繼續提問。
哇，可冇嘢講？
有冇提問？大家有冇提問？係啊，阿石宇。
即係今日我聽咁耐啲議員講同埋答咧，有時似乎好似對 Mr. Lynch 有少少唔係好公平咁。但個問題咧，唔係個問題唔係喺我哋議員嗰度，個問題喺西九呢個管理局嗰度，因為西九管理局好似似乎咧就係俾唔到我哋有一個信息，佢個目標係乜嘢，目的係乜嘢，佢計劃係點做。雖然我哋睇咗咁多文件，但係當佢答嘅文件，譬如而家頭先好似話係婚禮嗰個情況咁啊，有好多議員又問啦，係咪個人唔得啊咁，但係如果你有一個準則喺度，唔理係一個富商好，或者係旺角順水好，好似個個都有權咁去用，我哋唔應該有依度咧，因為富商佢就唔可以申請用阿順嫂可以申請，唔係咁嘅意。頭先阿梁議員都講得好清楚，每一樣嘢你有好清晰地，你啲條例係點去擺出嚟咧？西九管理局應該咧就要話晒俾人聽，所以冚唪唥明確係陽光化晒佢哋嗰個政策喺度。佢哋有政策要賺錢嘅，又要馬兒好，又要馬兒不吃草，就好難嘅。咁但係佢西九管理局有冇一啲信息出到嚟俾我哋睇到，每一個市民都睇到，佢點去用呢個？邊個想用可以申請 ？Disneyland 最近都有一個私人嘅 party 俾一個明星啦。點解西九唔可以用咧？咁就雖然Disneyland 都係政府同埋 Disney 一齊去拼嘅，咁但係咧佢有個咁嘅，如果有個咁嘅需求去用，佢咪講晒出嚟喺佢哋嗰啲小冊子好，佢哋嗰啲 bylaw 好，冚唪唥講晒出嚟。但係而家目前咧，我哋睇唔到佢有依樣嘢，所以可唔可以 Mr. Lynch 咧，即係翻去呢個同呢個管理局，或者要叫管理局主席嚟解釋下俾我哋呢個委員會去聽，就係唔係即係而家就 Mr. Lynch 答嘅問題咧，佢只係董事局嘅政策，而係佢又去唔超越咗嗰度。所以主席，我諗或者喺呢度咧，係咪有冇個需要叫董事局成員嚟去解釋下呢啲情況，主席
？OK， 首先 Mr. Lynch 先。
I take on board your points, Mr. Sheck, but I guess the reason that the chairman employs me to run WKCDA is to manage these activities, and clearly I think she's got plenty of other things that she needs to be doing at the moment alongside that. I think from our point of view, we've listened to the members, and we'll try and see if there is any points that aren't clear in terms of Annex 2, and if there's any more information that we can provide to make it easier for people to understand the criteria and what's happened. The only thing I would say in our defence, we have looked at each one of these proposals very carefully, and I think overall we are quite happy with the way that most of those events have taken place. And clearly we now have a much better understanding of the sorts of events. We have given priority to our own events and to arts and culture related events over all sorts of other activities. We have also, the majority of the activities have not been income producing to us. They've really been geared towards community or cultural use of the site.
我或者都可以提一提咧，喺文件第9段嗰度咧，就都有講咧，就係其實喺考慮呢一啲租用嘅申請嗰陣時候咧，嗰個主要嗰個優先次序咧，係會俾一啲文化藝術嘅節目嘅，咁而商業性嘅活動咧，其實亦都會係考慮嘅。咁如果係商業性嘅活動咧，就會按市場價格去收取。咁所以就即係其實都係一個公開，即係管理局亦都有公開向大家去講解，即係其實除咗管理局自己嘅活動之外咧，其他嘅商業活動都會係容許，不過咧就會收市場嘅費用嚇。
仲有冇其他人有提問？好，第二輪阿石。
主席，頭先即係我聽到 Mr. Lynch 講咧，即係個人佢就唔即係或者我聽錯咗，個人佢就唔會接受。但係佢話呢個嗰個即係嗰個講翻個 wedding 咧係一個好大嘅公司去做嘅。但係我呢樣嘢我又覺得唔應該喎。如果我個人同我一間公司有咩分別呢？如果你個政策係好清晰地講出嚟，無論係個人好、富商好、窮人好、有錢佬好，都可以申請去有咁嘅資格去咪申請。但係呢，因為我哋攞咗呢幾日公艇出嚟，同埋呢210億出嚟呢，係一個公眾嘅所有可以用嘅公眾呢，無論佢係有錢好冇錢好呢，我哋都應該呢係要同時同一個呢。即係公動性嘅角度去睇，係可以申請可以用，但係呢頭先佢講，佢明確定佢講出嚟，但係佢冇明確，佢明確話你個人唔可以申請，點可以個人唔可以申請？我想叫佢解釋下。
你願唔願意再解釋啊？我諗你講咗好多次。
I think the only point about credible organisations that we are concerned about their ability to deliver the event, the ability to manage the safety and other issues, food safety, people safety. That's the reason that we judge whether the event organiser is a credible organisation with an appropriate track record and can make sure that they're in a position to do that. But I take your point.
我諗咁啦，係阿 Bonnie 嚇。
我想補充主席，我想議員睇下咧第2段呢張 paper 第2段嘅 F 啊，因為管理局咧係將來唔係淨係管理，而家就係空地一塊，將來係會有建築物噶嘛。咁同埋管理局嘅我哋嗰個 mandate 係將來要收支平衡嘅。咁點收支平衡咧？就有收入有支出啊嘛。咁將來嘅收入都係由商業活動嗰度咧攞到收入噶嘛，咁所以F 嗰段就係話我哋而家空地一塊，我哋都係試下點樣咧攞到啲從商業活動攞到啲收入咧，咁嚟幫到我哋嘅支出。
我諗所有管理局都聽議員講啦，私人都可能大把水嘅，唔係個個好似我咁啊嘛，係咪？所以我覺得咧，你應該問佢有冇能力係啱嘅。佢如果係私人嚟申請，你咪問佢，佢會委託咩公司幫佢做，係嘛？你或者佢用咩方法去做，咁你都要考慮下先啦，唔可以即刻閂咗道門，私人就唔俾，係嘛？有錢就俾，咁樣一揚起咗100萬支標，咁你就即刻口水都流晒，唔得嘅呢樣嘢。咁我諗你呢樣嘢咧，翻去再研究下，睇下點做啦。仲有冇同事提問？如果冇，我嘅意見咧，就同阿石議員第一個問題咧就好相同。我而家就發覺咧，點解會出現咁多問題咧？就係話咧，民政局啊，你委任嗰班西九管理局嗰班咩董事局嗰班人咧，管理局嗰班人咧，全部都係社會賢達，但係業餘去睇住西九管理局行政嗰方面，咁咧就出問題㗎啦！呢樣嘢嚇，個個都社會賢達，公務繁忙，你應該再諗下，將來你再諗下，係唔係要過渡去好似管理港鐵咁樣，管理一啲市建局咁樣啦，係最低限度都要有一啲人全職咁樣咧去做呢個董事咧，去管理呢個西九管理局咧。如果唔係咧，純粹你好似其他嗰啲咩暑期青少年委員會咁樣去管理咧，就實係多問題出現㗎啦。你而家根本就管唔到，有委員就反映企呢度反映話，我都唔知佢點樣佢又唔理我，我又唔理佢。你呢邊咧就自己一個人做完出嚟咧，翻到嚟呢度又俾人捉，咁又何苦咧？根本你成個結構上咧，你係出現咗一啲問題，你唔能夠揾一啲業餘嘅人士管咗咁大棚嘅土地同埋嘅設施嘅，你應該係 諗一諗係咪要揾一啲專業嘅全職嘅人士去坐呢個管理委員會，坐呢個董事局啦，好嗎？呢個係我個人意見。OK， 如果冇咩有冇咩補充？如果冇咩補充，我哋結束今日嘅會議。喺結束之前呢，我都係 OK。
Hello? I think that's what my team's there to do. I think the idea that we are appointed to run the various parts of this project, and clearly, we work well with our board in terms of those responsibilities, and we've cleared these. Clearly we escalate those issues up to the board level. I don't know that it's actually going to be helped by full-time board members. I wonder how that actually would work in the good interests of the organisation。
咁啊，肯定有幫助啦，即全時間就好過啲 rubber seal 啦，係嘛？咁係，劉慧卿議員。
rubber stamp 啊，主席你話，唔係主席啊，我同意你講，即係我希望咧，即係亦都未必係要全職咯。講你真係全職坐晒嗰度，又唔知攞幾多10萬一個月就唔得掂嘅。但係你要揾啲人咧，一係有即係有知識啦，係有公信力，同埋比較獨立，肯出嚟講説話，亦都講公道嘅説話嘅。咁希望咧就係你揾啲嗰啲人，有咩事嘅時候，佢會甚至代表你個管理局出嚟講嘢，而咧人哋係信任嘅，人哋覺得佢係有能力、係公道嘅。咁呢啲我相信你哋揾啦。如果你揾埋晒啲人係幫唔到你或者幫到忙嘅，你自己又揾石頭揼自己嘅腳，即係你哋自己去考慮啦。即係但係大家覺得呢件事係要做得好。咁同埋咧，其實咧，我琴日都同兩位嚟見我嗰兩位人士講，我話嗰啲團體咧，啲藝團咧就好大意見，因為而家佢哋未接觸佢哋啊嘛。除咗講個戲曲中心，即係你個管理啊嗰啲，佢哋要參與嘅。即係你有啲持份者，你都俾咗佢嘅印象，佢覺得你將佢摒之於門外，咁呢個亦都唔掂。所以咧嗱，佢第日嚟咧，主席，我希望下次嚟佢會話俾我哋聽，佢同嗰啲主要持份者係有份傾過，大家吸納咗個意見，咁你第日管理咪暢順啲咯。同埋咧係交出嚟嗰啲數嚇，你主席你都講過幾次，又話7月啊嘛，即係你點樣超支法，你要寫晒列出嚟，好詳細講點解係超支，有邊啲係因為通脹，有邊啲係因為你增加咗新嘅設施，係當時計係冇嘅，你即係詳細去交代啦。我希望即係其實呢個計劃我哋係想去成功嘅，但成功得嚟呢，你係得到社會嘅支持，而唔係喺啲噓聲當中喺度搏命做咯。
夠啦嚇，即係係嘛？你舉手，第二個又舉手，咁一路舉落去，好嘛？第3輪啦，好嘛？
都話俾佢聽啊嘛，佢要去處理噶嘛。
咁啊，當第3輪啦啊！你講完有冇回應啊？啊，如果冇回應啊，下一位議員再發表意見。OK， 可收啦。
主席，我哋個會預咗開到12點噶嘛，當然即係早散就大家可以做多其他嘢啦，但係大家亦都預咗呢個時間。主席啊，嗰個董事局嗰度呢，即係我有呢個睇法。我哋當然希望一啲好有承擔嘅人用好多時間落去，即係亦都去同行政人員、西九管理局嘅行政人員大家一齊做事。咁我哋唔希望董事局係西九行政人員嘅橡皮圖章，但係我哋亦都唔希望董事局被委任嘅成員係政府嘅橡皮圖章。咁不過好兩難呢，就係香港而家對文化政策有認知嘅人呢，其實真係唔多，我哋底子唔夠厚。咁所以呢，我亦都喺呢度係請西九管理局，我哋喺國際嗰度請翻嚟嘅專才，亦都要盡快去明白我哋香港嗰個文化社會氣候。有一啲公眾嘅監察，我請大家接受。縱使我哋係用好多時間去講一啲細節，例如呢個婚禮咁樣，呢個亦都係必須嘅。並且我希望西九當局呢，係從呢個婚禮嗰個教訓嗰度呢，就睇到個經驗，有一套公開透明借用場地嘅原則，亦都係必須話到俾公眾聽。哪管呢個目標係想揾到收入去達到收支平衡嘅目標，或者係以公眾利益為本，俾公眾參與，呢啲目標同細則呢，都應該係好透明，話到俾公眾聽。 咁主席，我呢就希望西九當局呢可以盡快即係喺租用場地呢度呢，盡快即係同民間大家即係進行一個對話，去完善嗰個規則。另外一樣呢，主席，呢個戲曲中心呢，就而家如火如荼啦，即係招標啊、撥款啊、各樣啊、超支啊都係。咁但係嗰個軟件嗰度呢，我哋就睇到。即係參加呢個審批嘅委員會裏邊呢，有粵劇界嘅名人阮兆輝先生，佢係加入咗嗰個委員會。我哋對佢當然好尊重、好有信任。但係大家都知道呢，其實文化界裏邊有好多唔同嘅睇法㗎。咁我哋呢個委員會係咪亦都係時間就呢個戲曲中心各個設施同埋嗰個使用呢，係應該都進行一個公聽會，就係邀請戲曲粵劇界各方面嘅人呢嚟表達個意見，即係透過一個公開嘅場合去將佢哋嘅意見話俾西九管理局聽呢。嗱
我哋呢就喺嚟緊6月10號呢，就有一個聽藝術界嘅會嘅。6月10號星期一上午啊，咁咧就而家初定係9點至到12點啊，咁就驚住早個頭，大家有啲我哋起到身，人哋未起到身啊。咁咧就我哋即係 user friendly 啲啦，好唔好？咁咧就9點鐘先係開始開會。咁咧就有興趣嘅有意見可以嚟講，但係咧就呢個一單一呢個。戲曲中心呢，我就唔打算再開公聽會啦，因為以前都開過，而家呢再開就重複，而且如果真係有額外需要傾嘅呢，可以利用呢段時間呢，6月10號呢個機會呢，都可以表達佢嘅意見嘅，好冇？
主席啊，咁我都請秘書呢，即係盡量通知翻各界，即係話俾佢哋聽，即係6月嗰個公聽會呢，係歡迎佢哋嚟就各項設施去講自己個睇法咯。
OK。咁下一位石禮謙
主席 ，Mr. Lynch，I don't want you to leave with your team leave here that we are against you. We are not against. We actually appreciate the professionalism of your team members in trying to do a very difficult job in a very political sensitive area of West Kowloon. But what we're trying to do, the chairman has explained, and you possibly might not understand, that we are here to help. We want to make sure that the governing body of West Kowloon Authority is doing their job. I'm sure that they are doing it, but the job is not to be done by the executive. The executive, I presume, are there to execute the policies. And it's the policies that we have actually questioned on the issues of openness, the issues of bylaws, the issues of equality and fairness, the issues of accessibility to each and everyone. Although there have been criticism of wealthy people holding weddings, I hope there will be even more weddings in West Kowloon that everybody can apply on the equal footing, basis on your rules and regulations, that you are there to execute a job and doing it very well, but you're not here to take the brunt for the failures of the authority, not giving us enough information or their openness of how they're going to manage this particular important area. That is the crux of today's meeting, and we are not in any way criticizing your team. You know, I'm sure you're doing a very good job and a very difficult job. 多謝主席嚇。
我諗即係民政局要聽清楚石議員講咧，我好贊成佢嘅。即係你作為總裁佢個角色。佢唔係可以取代呢個管理局嘅角色嘅，我唔係話佢而家取代緊，而只不過係話佢唔應該做呢啲額外呢啲工作。你個管理局應該係一個強而有力嘅管理局，能夠係喺政策上咧提供好好嘅意見，同埋喺監督上咧提出係好有效嘅監督，係嘛？因為如果再係揾一啲咁嘅社會賢達業餘嘅時間去做咧，我哋出好多事造成嘅問題，我哋責怪 Mr. Lynch 咧亦都唔公道。我希望咧即係。民政局要翻去再重新去審視你管理局個成員嗰個同埋個組成個方式，好嘛？
即係就住西九呢一個整體嘅 規劃咧嘅計劃咧，所有嘅重大嘅政策咧，都係由管理局去決定嘅。咁實際執行就由行政總裁啊同埋佢團隊去執行啦。咁我亦都想回應一句咧，就係我西九管理局嘅董事局咧，就絕對唔係橡皮圖章嚟嘅。
但係我諗你都要加強翻咯。而家你出現兩樣問題，你即係責怪邊個咧？責怪 Mr. Lynch， 佢都頂唔順㗎，係嘛？咁你應該自己諗下管理局有冇責任先，呢樣嘢你自己要諗一諗啊，好嘛？你翻去再諗一諗啦，因為議員都講咗好多意見，我諗都係想搞好呢件事嘅啫，好冇 ？OK， 嚇，仲有冇其他提問？如果冇咧，就6月10號嘅會議係9時正開始嚇，文件寫咗8時30分，應該係9時正，至到12時。咁咧就關於2件事嘅，一件呢就係發展文化軟件，第2件事咧就係同呢個藝術界嘅溝通同埋合作，好嘛？多謝大家出席，多謝各位。